Chapter 776. The effect was significant. However, the dwarves on the city wall did not let out any cheers. Their prided cannons, falling below, seemed more like stones tossed into the ocean. There were ripples, but those ripples disappeared quickly, leaving no changes. Continue to load, continue to fire. Boom! 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 The cannons kept spewing, and the shells fell below. But it still did not stop the advance of the undead, not even their rhythm. Soon, the undead entered the designated second range. The captains gave the order again, fire the windpipe cannons. Thump! 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 Sounds like striking a copper pipe, mixing with the roar of the cannons. The windpipe cannons began to fire. This type of light cannon connected by 5 barrels, although less powerful than the regular cannons, when all 5 barrels fired at once, within a fixed range, it was even more effective than the regular cannons. After all, it was sufficient to kill. The bullets of the windpipe cannons once again fell into the undead ranks, causing a flurry of shattered stones, bone fragments, and dust. However, it still had no effect. Gunmen, shoot! Crack! 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 Another sound was added to the intense attack, like droplets of rain, began to pour down below. They slapped against the grey iron shield overhead. The bullets were deflected, scattering about. Only a few bullets, luckily penetrated the shield's gaps, but they did not have any effect. The effect of bullets, at this moment, was no more useful than the stones thrown down. Through the gaps in the shields, one could see shadows moving quickly. The next moment, under the shield, countless skeletons equivalent to human size, carrying swords, rushed out. And these skeletons were noticeably different from the previous ones. Because these skeletons were all golden. In groups, they rushed towards the city wall. They quickly crowded together, pulling and trampling on each other, beginning to climb upwards. The dwarves looked down and their hearts pounded in their chests. Undead continuously added to the pile of skeletons, more and more, higher and higher. In the blink of an eye, it reached 3 to 4 meters high, and still growing without stop. Hurry, stop them! The dwarves began dropping stones, tree stumps, and even empty crates. Everything went down below. It blocked the gathering of the skeletons. But soon, the dwarves found that such things had little effect on the gathered undead. It can't stop them from continuing to climb up at all. Throw the explosives down. The dwarves bent down to pick up the explosives, pull the fuse, took a peek and then threw it down. Immediately afterward, the explosion sounded. The pile of skeletons collapsed, a group of skeletons scattered around looking for their limbs. Then they gathered again and continued to climb. Switch to burning oil. Buzz whoosh. Carts of burning oil were brought over, and poured down on the mountain of gathered skeletons below. The entire wall of the city was like a waterfall of flames. It was spectacular and hot. The burning oil hit the ground, igniting a blazing fire instantly, setting the pile of skeletons below alight. The scorching red flame twisted the air as it burned. The fire began to spread, the golden armor turned into molten iron, the mountain of skeletons burned to ash in the fire. The great fire seemed like a buffer zone, giving the dwarves a chance to catch their breath. However, the undead archers had already reached their shooting range. Bullets raining denser than rain, pelting against the tower. In just an instant, many dwarves were hit, falling and wailing loudly. At this point, Frederick shouted loudly, "Take cover, continue to counter." Before he could finish his sentence, it was interrupted by the whistling sound in the sky. One could see dense arrows, like a giant black net, covering the sky and heading straight down. Crack! 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 Arrows fell, wails were everywhere. Frederick looked up just in time to see the bone dragon diving down. The blasting cannons, bullets flying everywhere, and arrows shooting towards the sky. The entire battlefield was in chaos. Gun smoke, and a ringing in the ears. Even the loudest orders were hard to issue. Chapter 777. Bone Dragon. Under the pressure of the Dragon Clan, the dwarves felt a chill in their hearts. Frederick was urging the soldiers, and the dwarves who could still get up climbed onto the anti-air crossbow bed. 2 dwarves assisted in turning the direction whilst 1 dwarf started to operate the crossbow bed, firing 1 large crossbow arrow after another. Crossbow arrows and bullets were raining down towards the sky in insanity. Like a dense net, it covered the sky. Even if the bone dragon wore a sturdy metal dragon armor, it was hit and its body lost its balance. The dragon armor was riddled with pierced crossbow arrows. The diving bone dragon was forced back, circling in the sky, waiting for an opportunity. Underneath the city, siege ladders equipped with metal hooks were hoisted against the rim of the city wall. Skeleton warriors began to climb upwards, holding round shields and stepping on the ladders. On one side, the dwarf defenders were hurling boulders down the ladders, while on the other side, they were wielding axes to chop at the ladders on the edge of the city wall. Shoo! Shoo! Bullets continuously whistled by, and as one dwarf fell, another from behind would pick up their weapon and continue to chop. Watch out for the siege towers! Another shout. The busy dwarves looked up, and the towering siege towers, equal in height to the city wall, had already reached the edge of the city wall. This huge tower-shaped device made of wood. It had a flat hook door in the front that opened and could be directly placed on the edge of the city wall. The assaulting soldiers could also directly storm the city wall through the interior of the siege tower. The dwarves did not hesitate and lit the oil bombs, immediately throwing them on the siege tower. Bang hiss! The fire blasted instantly, a fierce heat wave forcing the dwarves to retreat a few steps involuntarily. At such a close distance, their beards and hair were scorched by the heat wave. The fierce fire was burning. This kind of oil, once ignited, is very difficult to extinguish. Plus, with the dry weather and strong wind, the fire surged up in an instant, covering the siege tower. However, the ramparts still opened, and countless skeletons, ablaze, pounced on the city wall. Damn it, stop them! In an instant, the undead swarmed the city wall. A large number of dwarves quickly reinforced the defenses, resisting the impact of the fiery skeletons. Large numbers of the undead collided with the dwarves on the city wall. The skeletons were fiercely ferocious, recklessly fearless. But the siege tower, it could not stay for much longer. The drawbridges connected on both sides were the first to burn, and the siege tower itself was burning more and more intensely amidst the flames. Each siege tower was destroyed one by one. The lifted siege ladders that charged over were also stopped under the concentrated guarding. Frederick observed the entire battlefield. Perhaps others didn't realize it, but he was well aware. The battlefield's artillery fire was constantly retreating. The cannons were no longer firing shells at the farthest distance, but were bombarding the charging undead below at the maximum firing angle. It was not just the cannons, but the windpipe cannons, the military crossbows, and the rifles as well. All of their attack ranges were centered on the city below. Soon, the skeletons below gathered again and spread towards the city wall like a flood. The rocks were still ineffective. New oil was brought over. It was poured down the city wall everywhere like a heavy rain. Fire waterfall, like a fiery red cloth, hung over the wall. Hoo! The fire surged up again. Just as the dwarves thought they could defend other places like before. But a sudden change happened. By the city wall, the golden liquid seemed to have come alive, and started climbing the city wall in the view of everyone. The next second, the metallic liquid solidified into 5 downwardly inclined metal stairs, connecting the city wall and the ground. And all the skeletons below began to launch a fierce attack. Like a flood, they poured towards the golden stairs. What? The dwarves were scared and staggered, and a few of them even fell to the ground, their faces as pale as could be. What kind of ability is this? It's like the power of a god. Seeing this, Frederick's heart tightened suddenly. The Gold-Eating Queen. This is the ability of the Gold-Eating Queen, the undead king recorded in history. Didn't she appear in human territory? Why is she here? Suppressing his inner fear, he immediately roared, "Organize a defense. Do not let them climb up." The dwarves snapped back to reality. Rolled wood studded with metal barbs were moved up and rolled down the stairs. They were all crushed or squeezed off the stairs under the wooden cover. After the rolling wood, there is a line of spear guards from behind. The thin and razor-sharp spears were aimed at the location where the 5 stairs were, continuously stabbing and retracting, pushing the skeletons off the city wall. At this time, the sky wreathed in gunfire was suddenly streaked by the bone dragon. Facing the rain of arrows, it unleashed its rage at the city wall. A large number of dwarves were enclosed in black columns of light, turned into skeletons one by one. The bone dragon retreated upon attacking, turning around to fly away. The fallen dwarves were pulled aside, new dwarves took their place. They responded to fire with fire on one side while resisting the relentless skeletons attacking the city wall on the other. The war persisted from morning till dusk. And from dusk, till the deep night, the artillery fire didn't stop for a moment. The undead never slowed down their offensive either. In the undead camp, inside the command tent made from a giant beast skin, Dong Jiayu and others were all looking at the map in front of them. The defensive ability of the dwarves surprised them. Facing such a cost-indifferent attack, the dwarves were still defending the city wall. Even if the barrels were overheated, they would immediately replace them with new cannons and continue to defend. We've had them cornered for half a month, how can they still have such strength? Dong Jiayu was somewhat puzzled. Chapter 778. From the moment the war started, the dwarves tirelessly transported weapons and ammunition outwards. How they still had such a plentiful supply of ammunition was a surprise to her. This time, Amanda was the one to answer. It's not surprising. A big city like Grey Iron City has enough resources to last it even if it were under siege for a year, thanks to its ability to trade resources through the trade alliance. Throughout the battle, everyone saw the extent of Amanda's power. Using the gold staircase strategy, she almost successfully stormed the city. Unfortunately, the dwarves responded quickly, so the plan didn't succeed. Oh, I see. That makes sense. Dong Jiayu nodded in understanding. Up until now, she still hadn't established her trade alliance building yet. She wasn't worried about it before, but now it seems that the trade alliance is quite useful. Even if your city is under siege, you're still able to purchase goods through the alliance. The defense of Grey Iron City is indeed solid. Does anyone have a better strategy in mind? Dong Jiayu continued to ask. The others silently stared at the map on the table, falling deep into contemplation. After a while, Meat Fist spoke up, what about dropping bombs with bats? This tactic has always been effective. That won't do. If the skeletons can't fly in, we'll end up killing our own. Dong Jiayu shook her head in disagreement. The bat and bomb strategy is indeed effective. But against the dwarves, it isn't quite as effective. If the bat flock can't make it into the city, and instead gets shot down outside of it, then the bombs will just fall and kill our own troops. The casualties wouldn't be small at all. This strategy wasn't very effective in the 12 cities they had tried it before. When they tried it in the 11th city, they only succeeded because the enemy was exhausted, allowing them to fly in under the cover of nightfall. Seeing Dong Jiayu reject the idea, Meat Fist had nothing else to say. At that moment, Amanda chimed in, the dragon-type troops can fly directly into the city at a high altitude to create some chaos and alleviate the pressure outside. Before Dong Jiayu could respond, Spencer was the first to speak. The dwarves' air defense is very strong, we can't just fly in like that. If we could, taking down this city wouldn't be difficult. Being a dragon clan's living dead, if they were to storm the city by air, he would naturally be the one to lead the way in. But he didn't want to take that risk. From a high altitude, they would have a hard time threatening you. Amanda responded. It would be hard, not impossible. Spencer retorted. Dong Jiayu looked at the two of them and said, let's not rush. This is only the first day, we can afford to wait. She didn't want Spencer to take the risk either. If the orange hero died inside, she wouldn't be able to explain it to Fang Hao. Okay. Let's continue with the attack then. I'll try to gather more gold. Dong Jiayu whispered. Everyone nodded and left one after another. The next day, in the early morning, the sound of cannon fire and gunfire still resonated throughout the entire battlefield. The entire sky was shrouded in thick smoke. The air was filled with a pungent smell. By the morning, the piles of skeletons beneath the city resembled a mountain. The dwarves feared that the enemy could use these mountains of corpses to climb the city walls. This was the third time they poured oil over the piles of bones and set them on fire. However, the stones they hurled down still amounted to quite a large mound. The highest point reached about 7 to 8 meters high. Even though compared to the towering walls of the city this height was insignificant, the dwarves started to decrease the amount of stones thrown to avoid increasing the height further. Similarly, over the span of the night, undead climbed the walls over 10 times using various methods. Though they were finally repelled by the dwarves each time, it led to some casualties and damage to the defensive equipment. Add to that the concentrated assault from the archers outside, and you've got tens of thousands injured and several thousand dead within a single night. Faced with an army of the undead this large, these results were already considered excellent. Any other enemy would have retreated after such a long and fruitless siege. But the undead below did not, as after last night's battle, there seemed to be no significant change in the situation. The endless sea of undead soldiers still remained. Only the continuously decreasing amount of ammunition reminded them that the war was still ongoing. Atop the city wall, Frederick, clad in armor, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, loudly declared, "Victory will ultimately be ours. Our ancestors will bless Eight Peaks Mountain, the great god of craftsmanship and forging will protect Grey Iron City, Rune His Majesty will lead us to victory and defeat these damned undead. Long live His Majesty Rune, the dwarves are sure to win. Long live King Rune, the dwarves will prevail." The dwarves raised their arms and shouted, the noise momentarily even drowning out the sound of the cannons outside the city. Their fighting spirit was high. Frederick nodded, continuing, "Very well, everyone to take the places of your comrades on the walls. Hold this city wall." All the dwarves immediately sprang into action, dashing to the city walls, relieving the soldiers on duty. But once they were at the top, witnessing the unchanging undead outside the city, their recent ardor and morale instantly turned into fear and helplessness. One day and one night, the city was filled with injured, while the undead outside remained unchanged. "Is there any hope left? Hurry, get to your positions, don't dally." A urging voice came from the side. The soldiers numbly climbed onto the city walls, replacing their remaining comrades, continuing to operate siege equipment for the defense. On the same morning, after a simple wash, Fang Hao was already sitting in the great hall. Across from him was a goblin cradling a hot tea, a grin spread across his face. "Mr. Fang Hao, I hope my interruption didn't disturb your beautiful sleep," the petite goblin said. Early this morning, while Fang Hao was still in his dreams, he was roused by the sound of a knock. It was said that Mora had sent a teleportation request, asking if he can come over. Fang Hao moved the fox tail from his body, then remembered who Mora was. He was the familiar goblin teller at the Trade Alliance post. Unsure of his intentions, he allowed the goblin in. Then, after washing up, he went directly downstairs to meet this well-dressed goblin teller. "No, not at all. I'm actually delighted to see Mr. Moru," Fang Hao smiled, responding. He wanted to say it added luster to the occasion, but he was worried that Moru wouldn't understand, what with the cultural differences, and decided to choose a simpler phrase instead, as long as it got the meaning across. Moru also nodded with a smile, soon dropping the niceties, and got straight to the point. "Mr. Fang Hao, have you heard about the recent undead attack on Eight Peaks Mountain?" Fang Hao was slightly taken aback. The Trade Alliance is a neutral force. It wouldn't participate in any faction fights, nor would it disclose any information to any faction. Everything was done from a neutral standpoint, and they managed to maintain it rather well. Now, raising this issue all of a sudden surely meant something was up. Seeing Fang Hao's dubious expression, Mora quickly clarified, "No need to think too much, Mr. Fang Hao. The Trade Alliance maintains absolute neutrality. We just wanted to inquire about this matter privately." Fang Hao retreated his gaze and replied, "I've heard about it too and have been planning on sending troops to assist Eight Peaks Mountain. However, there have been some disturbances within the human territory recently, hence the delay." "Assist Eight Peaks Mountain?" Mora was slightly surprised. They had assumed that Fang Hao was the one attacking Eight Peaks Mountain. How come they were hearing about Fang Hao planning on supporting Eight Peaks Mountain now? What could this possibly mean? "Yes, the Federal Conference has ordered all cities to send troops to aid Eight Peaks Mountain. Unfortunately, due to the cold weather and snow, things have been delayed." Fang Hao responded calmly. Looking out from the window to the skeletons passing by now and then, Mora thought to himself, as if I'm going to believe you. Humans would probably accept a skeleton before they accept you. Without waiting for Mora's response, Fang Hao asked first, "Mr. Moru, why bring up Eight Peaks Mountain? Is something happening there?" After a thought, Mora decided to directly explain the situation. Placing down his cup of water, he said, "The dwarves from Grey Iron City approached the Trade Alliance, hoping that we could mediate to defuse the situation. But based on the information given by the dwarves, we couldn't ascertain anything. All we know is that a large number of undead and a transmigrator female is commanding them." Oh! Now Fang Hao understood. The Trade Alliance deduced that Fang Hao was connected with the attack on the dwarves, based on these two pieces of information. But, there was no solid proof. After listening, Fang Hao's expression didn't change. Shaking his head, he said, "I'm not too sure about what's happening at Eight Peaks Mountain. There are many transmigrators, and I surely do not know all of them." Rune nodded. After pondering a while, he still said, "Ah, it's a pity." Rune wished to put an end to the war and was ready to offer a certain compensation. Chapter 779. Hearing Mora's words, Fang Hao continued his line of questioning. Dwarves are quite wealthy, so their compensation must be very generous, right? Mora slapped his thigh. "Oh, it's not just generous, otherwise we wouldn't have needed the trade alliance to mediate. Mr. Fang Hao, would you like to hear about it?" Fang Hao raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Mora pulled out a small notebook, gently opened it, and began to read. 5 million gold coins, 150,000 in-house produced gemstones, 20,000 pieces of artifacts from the dwarven royal family, for the next 5 years, providing 100,000 muskets, 50,000 cannons, as well as 20% of the profits from the mines. Oh, and 2,000 dwarven beauties, that's it. Mora finished reciting the items listed after a while. It was clear to see that the dwarves had been impoverished by this war. The upfront resources they could provide were limited, their most valuable assets were to be provided in installments. Including the 100,000 muskets and 50,000 cannons over the next 5 years, as well as 20% of the profits from their mines. These were more valuable than 5 million gold coins. It was truly a maximum level squeeze on the dwarves' productivity for the next 5 years. "Mr. Fang Hao, what do you think of the dwarves' compensation?" Mora asked with a smile. Fang Hao dismissed it. It's average." If you think this is average." Mora was at a loss for words. "Haha, what does their business have to do with us? Come on, I'll take you to see the new factories we've set up. Maybe the trade alliance can sell our products in the future. It's bound to be a big hit." Fang Hao laughed and walked towards the door, dragging Mora with him. Mora had to follow him reluctantly. Clearly, the terms offered by the dwarves did not meet Fang Hao's requirements. This was something they had no control over now. Accompanied by Fang Hao, Mora left the room and mounted a giant lizard that resembled a giant beast, heading westward. They came to 2 orc villages. The rabbit people and fox people, clad in warm fur coats, were busy at work. What are they doing?" Curiously looking around, Mora asked softly. "Cosmetics, you know, for women to use, not just women though." Fang Hao explained as they walked along. He took a finished cosmetic product from a fox person's hand and handed it to Mora. Mora opened it gently, and looked at the pink cake-like substance inside. He examined it back and forth. Besides the finely crafted box, was the stuff inside just dried pink mud formed into a cake? "Is this food?" "What, food? It's meant for applying on the face. It's very popular in human cities. The market is definitely great. I plan to introduce this product to the trade alliance for sale." Do people really buy this?" Mora was still a bit confused about what effect this could have when applied to the face. If it were him, he'd keep the box and throw away the pink cake inside. Of course, the market has already verified it. Seeing Fang Hao wasn't joking, Mora could only nod. "We could try this among your products and see how all the races accept it." "No, people need to be taught how to use this kind of cosmetic. I plan to buy a store in the station to specifically sell this cosmetic. The location I've thought of is the one opposite to the pub," Fang Hao continued. The pub was the place where a variety of races gathered most. Moreover, for 20 warfire coins, one could have a cross-racial romance. By then, setting up a cosmetic store there should have some effect. Of course, earning money wasn't the most important thing, what mattered was name recognition. The leaders from all regions who could come to the trade alliance would see the Fairy Dream Tower's sign, which would be the best advertising. The first floor sold cosmetics, the second floor clothes. By that time, his brand would be known to all powers in the whole area. Mora looked even more astonished. "The store space in the trade alliance is very expensive, and you need approval." "I know, regarding the approval, Mr. Mora, I need your help to figure out how to go about this process," Fang Hao softly replied. Seeing Fang Hao's seriousness, Mora stopped saying anything else. He only nodded in agreement. "Okay, I'll handle the approval for you. As for the price, we'll have to see what the higher-ups say." "Haha, no problem." Fang Hao laughed loudly, led Mora on a large tour around the village, then rode the giant lizard back to the city. When the two of them returned to the city, they had lunch together before Fang Hao sent Mora off. This goblin clerk kept praising how delicious the food was at Fang Hao's. If he opened a restaurant at the station, it would definitely make more money than those damned cosmetics. Fang Hao only gave a slight smile, not saying much. The dishes were delicious because of Ira's good cooking skills, attributed to her master chef property, that's why she made such delicious dishes. He would not want to send Ira out just for the sake of making some small change. As the first person to accompany him, it was okay for her to be busy at home. It's different with cosmetics. The factory produced them, they were directly sold in all the stores. Moreover, the selling power of cosmetics could be even stronger than Moru imagined. The ladies and the noble women in Silverwing City had already proven this concept. After seeing Moru off, Fang Hao returned to the Lord's mansion. The weather had gotten colder, so it was impossible to sunbathe now. In the backyard, the rocking chair's arc-shaped legs were frozen to the ground, it couldn't be rocked anymore. Chapter 780. He had just sat down in the hall. Footsteps sounded outside the door again. Soon, the skeleton merchant, Dujin, walked straight in. Dujin was still dressed in a neat suit, holding a hardwood cane in his hand. Like a noble gentleman of the human clan, when not looking at his face. Good afternoon, respected lord. Getting to the middle, Dujin bowed slightly. Good afternoon, Dujin, what brings you here? Fang Hao motioned for him to sit down and speak. Dujin sat down on the side, and quietly spoke, Sir, I am here to report on the collection status of the materials for the wish pond. Hearing this, Fang Hao instantly perked up. The wish pond was an orange blueprint he was awarded just after he transmigrated. The functionality was quite magical. It consumes a fixed quantity of basic resources every week to make wishes, and there is a chance to receive rewards. Previously, Fang Hao had been keeping an eye on the building materials, and when he went to Silverwing City, he entrusted this task to Dujin. Is there any news? Fang Hao asked immediately. Dujin replied, Sir, the collection in this period resulted in 12 coral crystals and 8 tiers of the ocean. As for the breeze white coral and dawn blue coral, there are still no harvests. The anticipation in Fang Hao's heart instantly vanished. It seemed that these corals were indeed difficult to collect. Even the trade alliance didn't have any in stock. But there was nothing he could do, skeleton soldiers know neither fatigue nor laziness, so he couldn't blame anyone for it. Well, it can't be helped, just pay more attention to it in the future. Fang Hao said. Dujin nodded his head. And continued to talk about the second matter. Sir, the second thing is, the potion that Master Alchemist was asked to make by Bachelor Nelson in the Trade Alliance has been completed. I brought it here for you. The alchemist said that there would be a strong stinging sensation when taking the potion, and soaking in cold water could effectively alleviate some of the pain. Having said that, he carefully took out a dark red potion from his pocket and respectfully presented it to Fang Hao. The liquid in the bottle was a bewitching red color, slightly shaking, as though emitting a faint glow. Fang Hao frowned as he took it. Demon Dragon Potion, Orange. Categories, Alchemy Potion. Effect, enhance oneself to possess physical qualities comparable to that of the Dragon Clan. Description, a potion concocted with the pure blood of the Dragon Clan, drink it to possess the power that breaks the limit of your race. Then Fang Hao remembered. This was a potion made from the blood of Spencer. Spencer was a fire dragon. After being captured by Fang Hao, it had its skin peeled off and was bled by Nelson. Its body had been made into a living dead, its blood used by the Trade Alliance's master alchemist to make this potion, and its dragon scales were also being turned into dragon scale armor. Indeed, he knew how to live. Not wasting anything, everything on that body was used. After carefully placing the demon dragon potion to the side, Fang Hao smiled, well, you've worked hard, Dujin. I plan to replan the residential area soon. See if the skeleton merchants have any needs, and list them out to me when you're done. Thank you, sir. Dujin didn't refuse, just bowed in thanks. Has there been any change on the dwarves' side lately? Fang Hao continued to ask. Dujin answered, the dwarves have increased their orders for gunpowder and iron ore, food and armors. We have stopped accepting their orders. The territory was at odds with the dwarves. The key players all knew about it. Dujin had long stopped working with the dwarves. All trade interactions with them were completely halted. Even if they offered lots of money and our warehouse was full of goods, nothing would be sold to the dwarves. Good, keep an eye on the materials for the wish pond. Yes, sir. Then I'll take my leave. Dujin stood up. Fang Hao nodded, and Dujin also exited the hall. Holding the demon dragon potion in his hand, he guessed at the effects it would bring. After thinking about it, he decided not to take it right now. He had experienced the effects of a body-modifying potion in the past, and it wasn't pleasant. The one he used back then was just an entry-level magic potion. Well, what about this demon dragon potion? There wasn't anyone else around at the moment. Ira and Angia had all gone out to practice. If something happened to him in his room now, it would be bad news. No longer paying attention to the demon dragon potion, he started to have some free time. He opened the Book of Lords and checked the chat content in the area channel. As always, there were people looking for partners, selling equipment and selling resources. However, the best-selling items in the channel were no longer weapons or armor, but cold-resistant clothes. The prices of those furs, which didn't used to be worth much, had now more than doubled. Not to mention the ready-made cold-resistant furs. Over at Fang Hao's side, thanks to the efforts of all tailors, they had a large number of fur-warming robes and fur-warming trousers at their disposal. But he didn't sell them in the group chat. First, he needed to ensure the demand of the transmigrators in his territory and the affiliated cities. If there were surpluses later, he would then sell them in the channel. Besides buying winter clothes, more and more transmigrator alliances started to emerge. Actually, alliance tokens weren't rare items. They could be bought from some traders or from shops in the trade alliance. The formation of alliances allowed players to band together for warmth. Of course, there might also be swindlers like Li Zhenhu who would deceive the transmigrators using the excuse of alliances and then sell them to the locals. Such people wouldn't be limited to just one person. Fang Hao saw the bustling activity, then noticed a message suddenly pop up. Buying information on the undead north of Pruel City and on 8 Peaks Mountain. If any transmigrator has information from that area, you can private message me with your information. As long as the information is useful, the price starts at 100 Warfire coins. There is no upper limit. Pruel City? Where is that? I've never heard of it before. Is information really that valuable? What's going on at 8 Peaks Mountain? I have a friend staying around that area. I heard it's the dwarfs' territory. Message after message popped up with people asking about the two places. However, the other party didn't respond. Maybe someone was already selling them information. Fang Hao frowned, opening up the person's information panel. CAO Gen Z. From what he remembered, there didn't seem to be any news from this person. Fang Hao thought for a moment, then contacted Fu Lei and sent him a screenshot. Soon, Fu Lei sent back a reply. Boss, he gave me 100 Warfire coins after I mentioned that there was undead activity north of Pruel City, and asked me to continue investigating for more information, promising to pay more. Big spender. Just one sentence, without a single picture, was worth 100 coins. This person really isn't short on money. Fang Hao replied, asking, do you know his identity? Unclear, Fu Lei responded. I only know that he's somewhere around Silverwing City, gathering intelligence for his boss. He didn't say anything more than that. Silverwing City. He didn't have many enemies over there, only a few. Who could it be? Keep in contact with him, occasionally leak some unimportant information, and try your best to find out his identity. Got it, boss. The two ended their chat. Fang Hao continued to browse the chat, considering who might be investigating him. Dusk. A group of maids, dragging their tired bodies, returned to their lodging. Only Angia still had a full spirit, with the red general on her shoulder, she walked in with strides. Behind her, Ira and Little White looked a bit disheveled. Ira's ears had drooped, and Little White was also hanging his head low. Now, Little White regretted returning to the estate to spend the winter. The two of them flopped onto chairs, completely dispirited. How have the last few days been? Seeing their state, Fang Hao turned to Angia to ask. While feeding the parrot, Angia replied, it's not as easy as it looks. They have a weak foundation. They should have started training from a young age. Fang Hao checked the ranks of the two. Rabbitman Clan Warrior, 5th rank. Foxman Tribe Warrior, 3rd rank. Ira and Little White had both consumed strength potions, hence by default, they became warriors. Ira had advanced to the 5th rank, while Little White reached the 3rd. There was some progress after all. Angia, get someone to prepare a tub of cold water. I'll take a potion later, keep an eye on me. Fang Hao instructed. All right. Angia got up, and told a skeleton at the door to fetch some cold water. Soon. In the bathroom, the bathtub was filled with cold water. Fang Hao tested the water, it was chilling. After thinking it over, he decided to first drink the potion outside and assess the situation before entering the bathtub. Otherwise, soaking in cold water in this weather, regardless of whether he would catch a cold or not, would still be a torture. Having decided, he promptly opened the stopper and drained the potion in one gulp. Chapter 781. The dark red potion was swallowed. A strange, fishy sweet taste made one want to vomit. Soon after, he could feel his body starting to heat up, his skin turning red, and smoke wafting off of him. It was as if he had just been taken off the grill, freshly cooked. The heat persisted, and both his muscles and bones throbbed with an agonizing pain, as if every bit of his flesh was being pierced over and over by countless fine needles. Fang Hao's forehead was instantly covered in veins, and before he had time to strip off his clothes, he got right into the bathtub. Hiss! A sound echoed as if a hot iron had been put into water, and steam rose from the tub once again. However, it seemed like the pain on Fang Hao's body was indeed alleviated to some extent. At least it wasn't getting worse. Fang Hao's reaction scared the hell out of Angia, who was by his side. She immediately rushed over, fanning away the steam before asking anxiously, "Fang Hao, how are you feeling?" Fully submerged in the water, Fang Hao could vaguely hear the question from outside. He emerged, saying, "I'm fine, just have someone pour in some cold water." After saying this, he took a deep breath and submerged himself again. "Okay, got it." Angia immediately ran out and summoned several skeletons to transport cold water to the bath. Bucket after bucket of cold water was brought in and poured into the tub. However, the temperature of the bath water remained high as steam continued to rise. Every now and then, Fang Hao would emerge from the water, take deep breaths, and swan dive back in. Minutes and seconds passed by. The outside of the mansion was filled with maids and the Earth Spirit Priestess. Initially, everyone thought that the mansion was on fire, rushing over with buckets of water only to discover that it wasn't fire, but steam. "What's going on in there?" "I don't know. This is the master's bathhouse, he must be taking a bath. Even bathing wouldn't create so much steam, could something have leaked? Should we go in and check? Maybe the master's still bathing." Hee. Ira came out when she saw a group of eager bunny maids. She had been informed of the situation inside by Angia. She directed the skeletons carrying the cold water, then turned her attention to the congregated maids. "Everything's fine, the master is researching a spell. Now, scatter and go about your business," Ira said loudly. "Sister Ira, what is the master researching?" "Let us take the water inside and let the skeletons go guard," a rabbit girl proposed, constantly glancing towards the bathhouse. Ira pinched her waist, "Go on, stop messing around." Hee. The bunny girls immediately scattered, but were still whispering amongst themselves. Nearly an hour later, the steam in the bathhouse gradually lessened until it finally dissipated. Fang Hao emerged from the water. He told the skeleton about to pour cold water, "Stop, no need to continue. Take the water back and continue patrolling." The skeleton holding the water bucket paused in mid-air, then turned and left straight away. Ira, Angia, and the others immediately rushed in. Looking at Fang Hao, they asked, "How do you feel?" Fang Hao stood up from the bathtub, revealing his white and robust body. Ira, Angia, and Little White, all leaning on the edge of the tub, were staring at Fang Hao with widened eyes. Compared to before, Fang Hao seemed to be somewhat different. His body was even more muscular, with well-defined muscles but not to a grotesque extent, perfectly proportioned. And it seemed as if he was exuding a faint glow. He looked even whiter and smoother than women, which was somewhat captivating. "What are you looking at?" Fang Hao casually picked up a towel and draped it over him. The three women immediately regained their senses. Ira said, "Little White, quickly bring some clothes." Little White complied, turned around, and ran out, soon returning with clean clothes. Fang Hao tossed them on, and then walked out. After taking the potion, he could certainly feel a significant difference, even coming out without any clothes on didn't make him feel the cold. "What effect does this potion have?" Angia asked curiously. He had quite a reaction to taking this potion. At the time, Fang Hao was so red hot that it was as if he were made of burning iron, she had even thought that the potion would burn him to death. After that, buckets and buckets of cold water were poured in. Enough to fill a swimming pool. If it were anyone else, they would have frozen to death under such temperature. But the temperature of the water in the bath remained high. Thankfully, the outcome was good, and Fang Hao was unscathed. It was clear that his physical condition had significantly improved. Fang Hao didn't reply, as he was checking the prompt that had just popped up. Unlock, Dragon Body. Dragon Body, 1. You will have a physical strength close to that of the Dragon Clan. 2. Your blood contains the power of flames, boosting fire elemental magic power by 80%. Good heavens, 2 abilities were provided. One was physical strength, the other was an enhancement of fire elemental magic. Previously, he had planned to focus on flame magic, but after devouring the divinity of thunder elemental, he planned to switch to thunder elemental. But now, the power of flames had been boosted. Anyway, it didn't matter, he could learn both kinds of magic, and boosting their power would be a good thing for him. It would be even better if the power of every attribute of magic could be increased. Currently, the actual numerical value of the Dragon Clan's physical strength wasn't given. Chapter 782. The exact nature and effect of this ability might differ according to species or one's absorption capability. We still need to test its effect. Where is the light feather dagger? Fang Hao asked. Here it is. Angia took out the light feather dagger from her clothes. Fang Hao took it over and pulled out the beautifully designed dagger. He gently pricked it on the back of his hand. As the sharp tip of the blade barely touched his skin, a radiant light appeared, resulting in a pattern similar to scales at the pricked spot. The light flowed through the scale-like pattern, fending off the sharp blade at the tip. The flesh indented under pressure, but the skin remained intact. Wow! The 3 women widened their eyes, staring incredulously at the scene. Fang Hao was also somewhat surprised. This scale armor was somehow similar to Dimitrich's, but there were clear differences. Dimitrich's is a natural defense, with layers of scales growing on the outer body for protection. What Fang Hao has is hidden beneath the skin, which only manifests as a pattern to ward off damages when attacked. The effect is excellent. Oh, I know why your body subtly glows. It's the light from these armor scales, so cool, Angia exclaimed with surprise. Fang Hao, too, was pleased. Come on, Angia, give me a punch, not on the face but the arm. Okay. Angia threw a punch. Thud. A muffled thump sounded as her fist landed on his bicep. Just as Fang Hao tensed his muscle, the punch descended. He slid horizontally several yards before coming to a stop. It truly hurt, but there was no harm done. How are you feeling? I just saw, the scale armor appeared again and helped you offset quite a bit of the impact, Angia urgently asked when she came over. Fang Hao rubbed his shoulder. Indeed, it was as such. He could withstand Angia's attack unscathed, indicating that his body's defense was quite robust. Yes, I felt it too, Fang Hao nodded. Should we try the dagger? Angia asked enthusiastically. Fang Hao immediately shook his hand. I'm scared you might accidentally kill me. Come on, let's try. Just a stab in the thigh, it won't kill you, Angia grabbed his waist and said loudly. Fang Hao ambled along, dragging a clingy Angia, saying, let go, I don't want to get killed. Indeed, it's hard to test the exact strength of his skin's defense. Being able to withstand the light feather, a level 3 attack weapon, already demonstrated his skin's toughness. Meanwhile, Angia's punch highlighted his body's resilience. For a hero like Angia who specializes in physical combat, her punches could be devastatingly powerful. Adding a sharp weapon to that would make even a true dragon apprehensive about taking a hit, let alone Fang Hao. The two tossed around for a bit. It wasn't until he spanked Angia repeatedly on her buttocks that the cheeky Angia released him. She didn't bother about the idea of stabbing him with a weapon anymore. Silver Wing City. The domain of Suhaid. The 11th level city walls loomed large and formidable. The soldiers clad in church armor, their eyes cold and stern, patrolled while eyeing the scene below. Within the buildings, rows of houses lay in neat arrangement. Each household's windows were covered with beast skin to stave off the piercing cold winds. Inside the lord's mansion, Suhaid, the hairy lord, positioned himself near the fireplace. He was sitting on a soft sofa, with his legs propped up on the footrest in front. Two young and beautiful girls were massaging his legs and shoulders. Not far from him sat a transmigrator cloaked in thick fur, holding a cup of hot tea, sitting properly. Cao Gen Z, did we make any gains today? Suhaid asked without opening his eyes. The man who was sitting according to the rules at one side, promptly put down his teacup and anxiously said, Mr. Suhaid, I have conducted investigations through various channels. From several transmigrators, we can find out that indeed the undead have appeared to the north of Pruel City, and their numbers are not small. The war on Eight Peaks Mountain is very intense. The sound of cannon fire can be heard from a great distance and it has been ringing for several days without stopping. The transmigrator who was gathering intelligence in the channel was Cao Genzi. Unfortunately, the information he got was not much and it was all rather superficial. Is that all? Suhaid was somewhat displeased. Was he supposed to ask for such information? He could have guessed it himself. Cao Genzi immediately said, Sir, we have to gather information bit by bit. If someone directly tells us valuable information, it's very likely that it's a trap set by the enemy. Suhaid, who had closed his eyes, suddenly opened them and looked pointedly at Cao Genzi. You make a valid point. Cao Genzi felt numb under his gaze. He almost knelt down to apologize, but he didn't expect to hear such words instead. After a moment of thought, he continued, I've paid those providing information a certain amount, and promised them that as long as the information is useful, the rewards will indeed satisfy them. These people will need money during the winter, so I expect useful information to come in sooner rather than later. Suhaid nodded, speaking in a nonchalant tone, well done. Don't worry about the cost, as long as we can get information, I will compensate you no matter how much it is. Cao Genzi immediately showed a smile, Sir is generous, I will certainly do my best for you. Both of them were transmigrators. However, Suhaid preferred to be called Sir. In the channel, he didn't feel like other titles, such as Boss or Big Bro, represented his status as well as Sir did. By the way, do you know about Li Rong's territory? Suhaid continued. Li Rong? The owner of the Fairy Dream Tower. In Silver Wing City, Li Rong was more famous than Suhaid. But her status was far less than that of Suhaid. One was a shop owner whom the transmigrators in the city supported, while the other was a saint of the church, enjoying high status by virtue of the church. Yes. Assign some people to check her out. Suhaid said. Cao Genzi frowned. Check her out. Seeing that Cao Genzi didn't understand, Suhaid stated plainly, she's closely associated with my enemies. With that said, Cao Genzi understood the real meaning behind his order to check her out. It was nothing but making trouble for her. This made Cao Genzi hesitate, as he was also doing things for Suhaid recently. As for Li Rong, she held a high position in the hearts of the transmigrators in Silver Wing City. He believed that if Li Rong made a rallying call in Silver Wing City, every household of transmigrators would come out with pots and pans to fight. Making trouble for her seemed like making enemies for himself. Just when he was hesitating, Suhaid asked, Are you scared? This. He had received a lot of benefits from Suhaid. Saying he was scared or wanting to quit now would probably mean he couldn't even walk out the door. No, it's just that bullying a woman is somewhat dishonorable. Cao Genzi said. He was also reminding Suhaid that it wouldn't look good if word got out that he, with his status, was bullying a woman. Suhaid sneered, just do it, it's just a reminder. Cao Genzi had no choice but to nod and agree, understood, sir. I'll handle it in the next couple of days. Do so. Inform me promptly if there is any news. Yes, I'll withdraw then. Suhaid nodded, allowing Cao Genzi to slowly leave the room. When he left, a gust of cold wind blew across, relieving him with a sigh of relief. He wasn't sure if getting involved in this was a good thing or not. Grey Iron City. Inside the royal palace. Rune's attire was not fine, and the crown on his head was a bit crooked. He was still holding a scepter in his hand, but he kept switching hands and even wiped the sweat from his palm from time to time. Beneath him, a minister began to speak, Your Majesty, we have received a message from the Trade Alliance. Rune nodded, what did they say? The minister's face looked very bad, hesitating as if he had something to say but withheld it in. Rune gave a heavy knock with his scepter, and the minister immediately spoke up. The Trade Alliance said they have dispatched people to contact all powers related to the undead, and the dwarf's proposed price has also been sent out, but still no reply was received. After a slight pause, the minister continued, the Trade Alliance said they have tried their best but have no ability to intervene in this matter. Chapter 783 As soon as the minister finished speaking, the whole room fell silent. The trade alliance couldn't mediate, their last hope was gone. Rune, seated on the throne, turned pale. Was Grey Iron City about to fall under his rule? He'd only been in power for a few months. How can this be? They don't accept our compensation. Rune hastily asked. There was no response from below. At this point, the situation was very clear. The trade alliance must have figured out which side the undead were on. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said the opposing side was not accepting compensation. The undead clearly had the advantage, why would they easily end the war? Seeing no one speaking below, Rune suppressed his anxiety and continued, is there any other solution? Every day countless soldiers die in this war, who can tell me how to end it? Still, there was silence. The ministers, who used to be active and vied to show their wisdom in front of Rune, all fell silent in an instant. Each was nervous, their eyes darting. Who could think of any other solutions? Everyone was thinking about their own retreat. They did not want to stay here and be buried with the city. Speak! Rune roared. Everyone was startled. A minister stepped forward, shaky, and said, why not continue negotiations with the undead's commander? We can let them propose conditions. We must maintain Grey Iron City first. When these words came out, many people loudly agreed. If they did not like the conditions proposed by us, then let them say what they want. Whatever they want, as long as they have it, give it to them. Hearing the discussion, another minister scoffed and said, you go talk then, let's see how you contact the opposing commander during battle. This left everyone silent. Even if Grey Iron City had a secret tunnel for escape, nobody could approach the opposing commander. If they had that ability, why not just assassinate him rather than negotiate with him? Is there any other way? Rune continued to ask. The minister who just rebutted stepped forward and said, Your Highness, if the negotiation fails, have you considered using the services of the House of Faceless? They provide assassination tasks. He did not continue, but everyone understood his meaning. The House of Faceless is a necessity yet anathema to every city. They need them for gathering intelligence, but fear that their own intelligence will be leaked. Many cities have already started to eliminate the Faceless, including Grey Iron City, although it seemed they hadn't been completely eradicated here yet. Rune was somewhat hesitant, the Faceless in the city have been taken care of. Your Highness, you don't need to worry about this. I know a friend who can contact the Faceless. It just depends on whether you want to consider it or not. The minister looked directly at Rune on the throne. Everyone could sense something was off with this minister. His demeanor, his tone. He was the one who had contact with the Faceless. Rune rushed to conclusions, a cold huff, humph, the Faceless are common enemies of all races, as hateful as the undead. This is off the table, we will not be asking them for assistance. After being rebuked, the minister remained silent and drew back. The others also said a few words here and there. There were only a few options, none of them effective. With the discussion leading nowhere, it didn't take long before the meeting was adjourned. When everyone had left, inside the royal palace's study, Rune didn't wait long before seeing his attendant bringing a minister from the back door. Your Highness, the minister greeted. Rune nodded, speaking softly, the matter of the Faceless, you have a way to contact them. The minister didn't hide it, yes. Rune took a deep breath and continued, how much is needed to assassinate the opposing commander? All our money has been spent on materials, there's not much left. The minister revealed a small smile, Your Highness, the Faceless do not want money. Rune frowned, if not money, then what? Now he could confirm that this minister was with the Faceless. But he couldn't touch him now, furthermore, he needed him to save Grey Iron City. However, asking for something other than money might be even more serious. The Faceless want you, Your Highness, to join them and become part of them. In return, the Faceless will help solve your problem, assassinate the opposing commander, and even investigate the real instigator behind the scenes and kill them, the minister spoke confidently. Rune was instantly filled with anger. It was an outright coercion, forcing him to join the Faceless. With him joining the Faceless, the entire Grey Iron City and the dwarfs would fall into the hands of the Faceless. Such great ambition these despicable Faceless have. Rune wanted to slap his desk in anger, but restrained himself. What choice did he have now? Would Grey Iron City falling into the hands of the undead be better than him joining the Faceless? At least the Faceless were negotiable, while the undead relentlessly pursued war. He was silent for a long while. The sun set, and the night stone lit the room. Rune didn't say anything, while the minister silently waited on one side. 2 or 3 hours passed like this. Rune finally sighed, like a deflated ball, devoid of his previous spirit. His voice was filled with fatigue. I can agree, but our deal only takes effect after the opposing commander is killed. Chapter 784. The minister smiled, of course, your majesty, but before we act, we can sign a covenant first. With that, he took out a scroll from his bosom. Rune's pupils shrank slightly. He was all ready, the faceless had calculated everything, but he, a king, had become the most powerless one. The contents of the covenant were simple: after killing the commander of the undead, Rune would become a member of the faceless. Rune picked up the pen and signed his name on it. Once the covenant was accomplished, it disappeared instantly. Rune continued, well, I hope to see results in 2 days. You don't want to die in the city, do you? The minister nodded, of course, support will be dispatched from above to handle this situation. Humph. It better be. Then, your majesty, I won't disturb your rest. The minister finished speaking and went straight out of the study. Only Rune was left, sitting at the desk, staring blankly out the window, with the sound of gunfire constantly ringing in his ears. The next day, the sun shone through the window, casting a warm glow. Fang Hao woke up from his dream. Under the warm blanket, Ira, Angia, and Little White were still sound asleep. The demon dragon potion had enhanced his physical capabilities in every aspect. Even if he had to fight on multiple fronts, Fang Hao was always advantageous. He woke up the next day feeling energetic. After rubbing his eyes, he first checked the Book of Lords, and after seeing no new messages, he stepped over the sleeper and got up to wash and brush his teeth. Downstairs, the maids had already gotten up. They were peeking through the doorframe. What's wrong? Fang Hao was curious. Is Angia still not up? The maids hurriedly asked. Fang Hao understood, if it weren't for the fact that by this time Angia would have already been up and training them. Fang Hao thought for a moment and said, you guys rest this morning, and continue training in the afternoon. Yay! Someone cheered. The person who had just shouted was quickly silenced by a maid standing next to them. She quickly said, quiet, what happens if you wake Angia? Yes, yes, let's go, let's leave here. A group of maids hurriedly whispered. The bunny maids were actually not very old at all, usually around 17 or 18, or even younger. In the modern world, at this age, they'd usually be curious and full of vigor. Unfortunately, in this world, reality isn't so forgiving. Fang Hao called out to them, how about this, if any one of you can upgrade to the 8th rank, I'll reward her with 100 gold coins, 50 beautiful clothes, and a box of cosmetics. If you can upgrade to a hero, you'll get your own separate building, your own hot spring, and a decent monthly salary. You can buy whatever you want in the city. Wow! The maids' mouths fell open. Even training comes with rewards. Really? Of course, but there's a time limit to it. Rewards will only be credited if the upgrade is within the year. Fang Hao immediately said. What about us, master, what about us? A fox girl standing next to them asked hurriedly. Of course, notify everyone about this. For those who upgrade to heroes, I'll allow them to go to town and have fun each week. The maids' eyes widened, their faces full of longing. After whispering to each other for a moment, they all ran off to deliver the message. After a while, when Fang Hao came back, he saw one of the maids coming upstairs with a drowsy Angia. They insisted on training, which left Angia completely bewildered. Lyss City, Temple. The elderly priest Miriam, draped in a beastskin cloak, stood in the center of the open ground in front of the temple. Behind him were carts of supplies that were brought in last night. In front of him, the residents of the city filled the space. Winter had made these people thin and pale. When the cold wind blew, their bodies would shiver uncontrollably. Miriam raised his staff and banged it hard against the side of a cart. Silence, listen to me, all of you, silence. The crowd below gradually quietened down, each lifting their heads to gaze at the old yet spirited priest Miriam. No one knew when this stubborn old priest had seemed to become younger and more energetic. Once everyone had quietened down, Miriam spoke in a loud voice, every winter is a test for humanity. Cold and hunger take away our loved ones, our friends, and even ourselves, while most people are powerless. The people below all cast their eyes downward in unison. It's not the city's nobility that rises early and gathers at the temple. These cold and hungry individuals are seeking help from the temple. But winter is long, and they know that it will be difficult for them to survive it. Miriam continues, to help everyone get through this winter, our gracious city lord has posted several jobs in the city, recruiting militia, constructing the city. As long as you are not slacking off, you can get 2 meals a day and a salary. City lord? Everyone exchanges glances. Has priest Miriam lost her mind? Why is she not mentioning the gifts of the god of light today, but the great city lord? Oh! That's right, how can the gods see their suffering? Priest Miriam, with the freezing cold, where could we construct the city? The ground can't even be dug up. Someone immediately voiced out loud. Miriam looks down at the filthy youngster among the crowd. A smile appears on her wrinkled face. If you can think about this, don't you think the city lord and the lady would do the same? Many people need this job to survive this winter. Everyone understands her words unless they are very slow. She arranges these jobs at this time to give more people work. Oh, I see. Miriam turns her gaze back to everyone and loudly says, do you see the carriage behind me? It's full of supplies sent by the city lord. After registering and confirming your identity, each household can receive winter warding fur and herbs. Really? Can we receive it for free? The more Miriam spoke, the less people believed. The nobility in the city, whether it's the god of light, has ever cared about the lives of the common people. This year is already considered good. The neighboring villages haven't been plagued by bandits, otherwise, many makeshift shelters would have sprung up outside the city. Dead bodies frozen by the roadside are everywhere. This year, not only are there no bandits, but the new city lord of Lyss city even sent supplies. This is too good to be true. Miriam isn't angry but calmly says, the city lord has a kind heart and can't bear to see everyone suffer. Now, line up to register. After receiving the supplies, go into the temple to thank the statue of the city lord and then you can go home. The residents immediately form a long queue. They begin to orderly collect the winter supplies. Then they enter into the temple, kneel before the statue of the city lord to give thanks, and leave in groups, chatting about this day at the temple. Except for those who were caught cutting in line, everything went smoothly. Everyone praised the city lord and mentioned how different he is from the other nobles. The same scenario unfolds at all the affiliated temples of the city. Distributing furs and herbs to those who struggle to survive the winter, with the only request being to kneel in thanks before the statue in the temple. Whether it's humans, orcs, or even the tough-skinned trolls, no one would refuse these free items. All they had to do was kneel and bow, that's all. 8 Peaks Mountain. Late at night. The deafening sound of gunfire continues, the earth trembles persistently. The sudden bursts of fire illuminate a figure that runs swiftly. She wears dark clothes, a dark mask that hides her face, revealing only her purple eyes. Like a dark elf, each time she stops, her figure blends with the darkness and disappears. The passing skeleton soldiers, however, do not notice her. She swiftly moves through the darkness. She comes to a tent made of stitched beastskin and stops. She hides in the darkness, silently observing the scene before her. Surrounding the tent are bound spirit guardians emitting green fire. These intelligent undead might detect her traces. But it's not a big problem. The shadow assassin's figure blurs and she disappears back into the darkness. Boom! Boom! Using the sound from the distant gunfire as cover, she crushes the skulls of 2 skeletons. The soul fire quickly extinguishes. Followed by the second round of gunfire that cleansed 2 more guards. This left the tent completely defenseless. The shadow assassin smirks, lifts a corner of the tent and crawls in. Avoiding the traps around, she quietly enters the tent. She pulls out a jagged dagger from her waist. She strikes at the person sleeping on the bed. Thud! The sound of the blade piercing flesh, her blade sinking in right down to the handle. Chapter 785. The shadow assassin didn't dare hesitate. She abruptly withdrew the dagger from her hand, just as she was about to stab a few more times. However, a doubt was spawned within her. How come the person on the bed didn't bleed or struggle at all? The serrated edge of the dagger should have drawn the blood as it sunk, but there was not a single drop of blood. Just as she hesitated, a searing sense of danger suddenly assaulted her. Looking down, she saw a ring of fire spreading from the body of the person lying on the bed. Whoosh! The fire was raging. The shadow assassin twisted her body and tried to escape, but it was already too late. The flames instantly blasted her away, spreading along her body in a stream of fire. The shadow assassin clumsily crawled herself up, taking out a bottle of powder from her arms and sprinkling it on herself. The burning fire quickly extinguished, but large patches of burn marks were still left on her skin. Under the illumination of the fire, she could now see the person on the bed clearly. A wrinkled and sallow creature. No, to be precise, an undead. No wonder there was no response from it when she struck. The surrounding noise increased, and a large number of silhouettes carrying torches were flocking here. The shadow assassin did not delay and reached for her scroll to escape immediately. The array spread under her feet. At the same time, fireballs, bullets, and a golden liquid behemoth were shooting toward her. There was not enough time. The shadow assassin abruptly disrupted the array and dodged the incoming attacks. She immediately jumped high to one side. As she moved away from the light of the fire, her figure began to gradually fade, about to disappear into the night. But just then, the color from the assassin's face drained. Looking down, she saw a golden liquid coiling around her ankle. The next second, the golden liquid began to spread across her body at a terrifying speed. Boom! A muffled sound. The assassin fell from the sky, her body beneath the head thoroughly wrapped in gold. It was like a golden coffin. A gilded coffin with an exposed face. Thud! The golden coffin landed and toppled over. The face-down assassin coughed up a large mouthful of blood. It was only now that Dong Jiayu and the others approached. The dwarves really can't give up. It was Amanda's idea to disrupt everyone's dwelling places. She commanded sufficient troops and had already guessed that the desperate dwarves might resort to assassination. Most of the heroes might not be afraid, but Dong Jiayu was at great risk. So, Spencer had been allocated to the main tent where Dong Jiayu lived, and Dong Jiayu was moved to an average tent far away. Even if the enemies knew that Dong Jiayu was in an average tent, it would be tough to find which one she was in among a row of tents. Looking at the wound on Spencer's back, Dong Jiayu couldn't help but swallow her saliva. This was too dangerous. If she had been stabbed, it would have been goodbye for her. Assassinating the commander is a common tactic, but, Dong Jiayu, you don't need to worry. You are safe. At this moment, Amanda also leisurely walked over. Dong Jiayu gave a forced smile. She thought, I don't feel safe at all. The orange-ranked hero had been stabbed. I'm scared. So, what's next? Do we interrogate her? Dong Jiayu looked at the assassin who was wrapped in gold on the ground. Shadow Stabber Morse, purple rank 3 hero. A hero. And a purple one no less. No wonder she could enter the camp silently and stab an orange-ranked hero. Amanda answered, there's no need to interrogate an assassin hired by dwarves. So what do we do now? Dong Jiayu continued asking. She could be killed, her body made into an undead to continue serving us, her soul could be stored in the Tower of Souls and then devoured by other resentful souls. Amanda's tone was still indifferent. The imprisoned shadow stabber shuddered violently. She was obviously scared by these words. Dong Jiayu nodded. She was about to order her men to cut off the assassin's head when Amanda stopped her. Instead, she continued, it appears you fear death. If you do not wish to become an undead, I can give you a chance. The shadow stabber lying face down on the ground knew she was being spoken to. She asked in a low voice, what kind of opportunity? I have contracts on me. I can't say anything. Amanda said, go to Grey Iron City, kill Rune. Are you crazy? Kill my employer, I will be killed when I go back. The shadow stabber roared loudly. Amanda pointed lightly with her staff, and the golden block on the ground, along with the assassin, stood up at once. If you don't agree, you'll die right here. Furthermore, I can also promise you that once you come back successfully, I'll help you remove the contracts from you. After that, work for us. You guys. The shadow stabber sneered, is there a difference? Working for the undead or the demons made no difference. Amanda said, our leader is a human. You can obtain significant freedom and resources. How about it? The shadow stabber thought for a moment and said reluctantly, do I have a choice? Good, Rune, I want him dead, and the hero's altar should be incapable of resurrecting him. Amanda finished speaking. She reached out once again, and a golden liquid flowed into the assassin's nostrils. The assassin began to struggle violently, but she couldn't get out. She could clearly feel a liquid flowing into her brain, accumulating there. "What are you doing?" she roared angrily. Under Amanda's mask, her tone remained calm. 12 hours. If Rune isn't dead, the liquid in your brain will turn into a hedgehog, piercing your skull. Chapter 786. Are you a devil? The assassin gritted his teeth and said. What do you think? With a slight move of Amanda's scepter, the gold formation on the assassin's body liquefied, returning to the necklace around his neck. The assassin was now free to move, but his eyes were fixated on Amanda. His gaze was filled with rage, fear, and doubt. 12 hours, remember that, she commanded before turning to leave. Dong Jiayu did not linger either, and they all left the place. After some hesitation, the assassin also turned and disappeared into the night. Upon returning to his quarters, Dong Jiayu immediately summoned 20,000 undead soldiers, barricading all the tents. Not leaving any gap, fearing that someone might attempt to assassinate him in the middle of the night. Time went by gradually. The next day at dusk, the sky began to darken. A huge beast-skin tent was lifted open. A figure, covered in blood, with a gloomy face, entered the tent. Just with a casual throw. Thump! A human head rolled to the feet of Dong Jiayu and other heroes. This was the head of a dwarf. Thick beard, and a pair of eyes that refused to close even in death. This is Rune, remove the thing from my head. Shadow Stabber fixed her gaze on Amanda in the foreground. Amanda did not answer her, but looked at Dong Jiayu instead. The latter nodded, then called out towards the exterior, "Get Belerga over." Soon, footsteps sounded from outside. Belerga, a dwarf looking somewhat disheveled, strode in. Just as he stepped inside the tent, his gaze fell on the head on the floor. Dong Jiayu said, "Belerga, can you tell who this is?" Belerga frowned, leaning over to examine. As soon as he picked up the head, recognized the face, his expression changed drastically, and he retreated several steps. "Rune?" Belerga's eyes were full of disbelief. "Are you sure it's Rune? Take a close look," someone urged. Belerga lifted the head, inspecting it once again with great care. He even checked for any disguises. Eventually, he nodded, "This is Rune. How did he die?" The shadow stabber beside him, her side still dripping with blood, laughed coldly and said, "Of course he's dead. Moreover, I have also destroyed the dwarf's altar. He can't be resurrected. According to our agreement, you can get that thing out of my head, right?" Inside the tent, no one paid any attention to her. Dong Jiayu abruptly stood up and loudly announced, "Now that the dwarves are leaderless, it's the perfect time for a total assault. Everyone prepare." Half an hour later, we launch the total assault to take over Grey Iron City. Yes. Crash. As soon as Dong Jiayu had finished speaking, everyone stood up, heading for the outside. Except Amanda, who stayed behind, watching the shadow stabber, who was extremely weak from excessive blood loss. With a wave of her hand, the liquid gold once again transformed into solid gold blocks, enveloping her. Following that, a thread of gold slowly flowed out from her nose. "All right, you just stay here for now. Once this is over, I will release the contract binding you." "You?" The shadow stabber was about to say something, but Amanda had already left. She knew herself to be incapable of breaking free from this constraint. So, she had no choice but to close her eyes and keep silent. But she could feel it. The shaking of the earth intensified, and the cannon fire grew increasingly dense. Damn it, why am I so unlucky? Grey Iron City. Inside the royal palace, complete chaos. With the news of King Rune's assassination, the dwarves' high inner circle was instantly shocked. Various factions, which had been on standby, immediately seized the opportunity for retaliation and accusation. Papers were brought forth, supposedly evidencing that the other party was responsible for the king's death. A testimony of collusion with the undead. The king's trusted aides were locked in dungeons, and new troops had taken over the palace. The grand hall was filled with recriminations, curses, and even physical scuffles between some dwarves. The entire royal palace was a scene of utter chaos. Just then, panicked footsteps resounded from the periphery. A dwarf came crawling in on all fours. Seeing this scenario, he instantly reported. "Just now we received news from the ancestral square. The altar cannot operate. His Majesty Rune cannot be resurrected for the time being. The dwarf who relayed this news didn't have a loud voice. Yet it was as if someone had pressed the mute button. The entire royal palace went quiet. The silence was so profound, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone in the hall turned their eyes on the dwarf attendant, as if trying to gauge any hint of deception on his face. "What did you say?" "You have to be responsible for what you said," an elderly minister warned. The dwarf attendant's legs trembled even more severely, but he stuttered, "The ancestral square has sent word, they said the altar has been damaged, and it can't operate for now." "When can it be fixed?" someone inquired. The attendant replied, "It was said that the damage is severe, and the warehouse is lacking materials, so it will take some time." Whispers. As soon as these words came out, the entire room descended into chaos. People were no longer arguing about who was responsible, they began to worry about their lives instead. The undead are fiercely fighting on the periphery, and King Rune cannot be resurrected at present. Without a leader, with all the factions divided, how could they possibly repel the attack of the undead? If the undead break through, it would only be a matter of time before they fell. The atmosphere only grew more chaotic. Before long, a number of people had quietly left, one after the other. Even the soldiers who were supposed to protect the royal family had scattered, leaving only a handful of them behind. In the blink of an eye, only a few worried faces remained in the royal palace. At the city walls, the roaring of cannons and the smoke of gunpowder filled the air. The entire world seemed to be shrouded in thick smoke, severely affecting visibility. Chapter 787. Outside the city walls. The land was scarred, with dense, deep pits left by shells in the distance. At the edge of the city wall, skeletons and debris had formed a slope more than 10 meters high. The oil had been depleted, and the dwarves had doused the city walls with a layer of cold water. After freezing, the slippery surface obstructed the undead's climbing. Boom! A shell exploded at the edge of the city wall. Rocks scattered. Dwarf General Frederick dusted off the pebbles from his body. Looking down along the city wall, his gaze became sharper and colder. The undead outside the city started to move. The attacking undead increased in number, and various equipment had re-entered the battlefield. A major offensive was imminent. "Quickly, send word, have all the other legions come and defend. The enemy is launching a full-scale attack, bring the equipment from the warehouse too," Frederick shouted. A dwarf standing beside him listened intently. Surrounded by the roar of the shells, he memorized the general's orders. "Yes, General," he said, then turned around and ran away. Just as this man left, whoosh, 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 a piercing noise echoed in the air. 3 flares were suddenly shot towards the sky. Pop, pop, pop. As the flares exploded in midair, the dense fog overhead cleared up instantaneously, and the orange glow illuminated the night sky. "Air units, attack!" Sure enough, descending from the mist, were the bone dragons flying rapidly, and attached to them were clusters of skeleton bats. Crackling! Bullets, anti-air crossbow arrows flew towards the sky. The dense bullets, like a giant net, went up to trap the invaders. In an instant, the bodies of the skeleton bats plummeted from the sky. But more skeleton bats immediately took flight. Whiplash! Like a dark storm cloud sweeping down from the heavens, the bats rushed towards the city wall below. The scene was incredibly shocking. Frederick turned pale, the undead had gone mad, attacking at great cost. A large swarm of bats flew into the city wall and began to rip, bite, and eat the dwarves. Meanwhile, the bone dragons in the sky were circling, readying their dragon breath at any moment. "Hold on, reinforcements from the other legions will arrive soon, all of you hold on," Frederick shouted loudly, encouraging his soldiers. As his voice fell, a howl echoed in the sky once again. A barrage of arrows rained down. A large number of dwarves were hit and groaned in pain. The black magic bullets were launched again, drawing an arc in the sky, they blotted out the firmament as if sealing off the sky. They detonated over the city wall from afar. Bang, bang, bang. The dwarves who had not yet left again were bombarded. Bodies and equipment were flung high into the air, negative energy filled this dwarf formation. Acting like lunatics, the undead initiated an all-out attack. Bone fragments continued to fall from the sky, and the skeletons swarmed to the base of the city wall, stepping over each other, crowding and beginning to ascend. Wave after wave of dwarves clambered up only to perish. Each wave of fallen dwarves was replaced by another, exploiting any tiny gaps to resist the undead onslaught. But there remained a glimmer of hope in the dwarves' hearts. Reinforcements only if the rest of the people, currently off duty, returned would they stand a chance of holding the city wall. However, time was ticking away. The undead's golden staircase appeared once again, but the dwarves were too few to resist a large-scale onslaught now. Frederick kept glancing back, his eyes filled with anxiety. This is when he finally saw the soldier who had gone down to deliver the order. He came running over with just 1,000 men. A sense of dread filled Frederick's heart. He asked, "Where are the others? What happened?" The soldier's face was grim. He pulled Frederick aside and said, "General, King Rune was assassinated and cannot be resurrected at the altar. Many ministers in the city have fled, and we can't find the quartermaster. I could only gather this many men." Frederick felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. Rune was dead, and the others had fled. While his men were fighting desperately at the front, those at the back had already escaped. "Damn those useless fools!" Frederick cursed loudly. He glanced back at his soldiers, his eyes reflected a hint of confusion. What should he do now? Frederick looked back at the soldier beside him and ordered, "You, take your men and burn the quartermaster's repository and the warehouse immediately. Leave no piece of paper behind." "Yes, General." Chapter 788. 2 o'clock in the morning. Swish! The undead army swarmed to the city wall like a tidal wave. Dwarfs offering stiff resistance did not necessarily die under swords. More often, they were pushed off the wall by the surging skeletons. Once the wall was breached, the undead's offensive momentum was unstoppable. In the blink of an eye, the dwarf camp was on the verge of defeat. The dwarf wall, purported to be the most solid, was thoroughly breached. The undead army poured into the city. One after another, city gates were flung open as more of the undead rushed in. With the dwarfs who fought fiercely, bloody street battles ensued. However, the number of the undead was overwhelming, flooding into the lanes like a spate. Instantly, all defenses were toppled, pushing the dwarfs towards the city center. Retreating and killing until they penetrated the royal palace, the city gradually fell silent. Low sobbing and agonized moaning echoed in every corner of the city. At the same time, Dong Jiayu sent dwarfs into the city. Roaming the city alleys, they shouted, "Don't fight back. As long as you don't resist, you will be safe." Swish! Thud! From a second-floor window, a bullet shot towards the shouting dwarf. The dwarf fell from his horse, fumbling for his head. His head was fine, but when he brushed his hand against something, half an ear appeared in his palm. The dwarf swallowed, feelings of anger rising in his heart. "Charge in, kill the people on the second floor, quickly." Skeletons entered the room, killing the dwarf snipers. Grey Iron City gradually fell silent. The city's streets and alleys crawled with undead skeletons, standing still on the streets like sculptures. Occasionally, dwarfs would stroll through, loudly proclaiming that those who surrender would not be killed. Inside the palace, Dong Jiayu sat on a luxurious throne, coldly looking at the dwarf minister brought before her. Belarga, previously a royal successor, gave clear advice on who the upper echelon was. Only then did the dwarfs learn of Belarga's presence in the undead clan. "How are the storage and data archives faring?" Dong Jiayu asked, looking grim. "These dwarfs are truly hard-hearted." Upon entering, she saw 2 places aflame. Dong Jiayu immediately ordered a fire rescue, but she doubted much could be salvaged considering the intensity of the flames. A human guard whispered a report, "My lord, they're still extinguishing the fire. Mainly the data and equipment rooms have been hit. We can confirm the goods and grains warehouses are safe." Upon hearing this, Dong Jiayu breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully the granary is safe. Otherwise, occupying Grey Iron City this winter would have meant those who surrendered would be a burden. It would either mean killing people, to save on resources, or feeding these people through the winter. Now there's no problem, and one less worry for her. "Okay, assign more people to extinguish the fire. We must quell the flames tonight," Dong Jiayu continued to order. "Understood, my lord." Once the soldier left, Dong Jiayu's gaze fell back on the dwarfs kneeling before her. A few of them were even heroes. They had all been part of the dwarfs' upper ranks. She coldly said, "When you began your pillage of the transmigrators, you instigated this war. At that time, you were in a superior position and didn't care about the transmigrators' fate. Now the tables have turned. If you want to blame anything, blame your own greed and your King Rune, who lead you astray? Kneeling on the ground, the dwarfs hung their heads in silence. Not wanting to waste words with them, Dong Jiao ordered, lock them all up in a dungeon. Kill anyone who attempts to make outside contact. Yes, my lord. The dwarf prisoners were escorted out. Dong Jiao continued, Belarga, you know this place well. Take people and immediately take over the remaining army. We can't afford them stirring up trouble. Yes. Once Belarga left, Dong Jiao, having finished her orders, opened the Book of Lords and dispatched a message to Fang Hao. The next day, early morning. After Fang Hao finished dressing and making his toilet, with Ira and Little White's help, he donned his noble attire. Wearing a straight and elegant suit, he appeared more dignified and noble. Last night, he received a message from Dong Jiao. She had taken Grey Iron City. Naturally, he was thrilled at the news. Today, as the leader, he would go to Grey Iron City to take possession of the city and reward his subordinates. Once the final button was in place, the two women beamed with satisfaction. You look so handsome, Little White complimented. Fang Hao lightly pinched her small face and strode out of the room. Inside the first-floor lobby, Dimitrija and Angia had been waiting for a while. Fang Hao checked the time, 7:27. He immediately initiated the teleportation curtain heading to Grey Iron City. The three of them stepped into the curtain. Upon opening their eyes, they arrived within a lavish palace. Underneath their feet was a fancy, soft carpet. The walls were made of glossy stone that shone brightly. Even the curtains on the windows could be discerned as expensive silk. The dwarfs, are they rich or not, really? When making reparations, they were stingy. But looking at this palace, it's much more luxurious than his own. There was a sense of modern decorative aesthetic. Lord! The moment Fang Hao appeared, everyone present bowed. Even Dong Jiao, who usually affectionately called him Brother Hao, bowed at this moment. Chapter 789. Especially the group of transmigrators behind Dong Jiao. While offering their salutations, they were subtly sizing up the famously powerful Fang Hao. 6 arms, special forces, genetic mutant, hey? But in reality, he was just a handsome-looking young man. No, he was incredibly handsome. What cosmetic product was he using? His skin seemed to glow. Everyone please rise, in this war, all of you are heroes. Fang Hao spoke out loud. Then, he walked up to the throne above and sat down. Speaking to Dong Jiao, he said, Jiao, give us a brief overview of the situation. All right. Dong Jiao stepped up and loudly reported, the residents of Grey Iron City were not attacked, they all hid in their homes. The remnant army is now being controlled by Belarga. Additionally, we captured 372 dwarf officials. The document and ammunition warehouses were burnt down, which caused some explosions. The grain storages and general inventory were not affected. She took a deep breath. 42 royal family members were captured. We discovered 122 boxes of money and jewels, 1 platinum chest, 12 golden chests, and 18 silver chests. When Dong Jiao finished speaking, the atmosphere became heavier. For Fang Hao and several heroes, these resources and treasure chests were not something big deal. But for Dong Jiao and a few transmigrators, just these treasure chests were enough to surprise them. As expected, the silver treasure chests contained gold, and surprisingly, there was even platinum-grade treasure chests. Forget about opening the chests themselves, sharing this news would be enough to brag about on the channel for at least half a month. The equipment data was burnt. Fang Hao's eyebrows knitted together instantly. Dong Jiao nodded and said, seeing that the walls of the city could not be defended, the dwarfs ordered the data and weapon repositories to be burnt down. They originally planned to burn down all the other warehouses, but there was a disagreement among them, so they didn't succeed. These guys were pretty ruthless. Burning the food supplies meant that they planned to have all the dwarfs in the city die with it. When the time came, even if the city was captured, the victors would find no food supplies. They wouldn't keep too many prisoners, so as to not increase consumption. No problem, Fang Hao said softly. The equipment blueprints might have been destroyed, but there were treasure chests and a large number of captured dwarves. It wouldn't be hard to regain the blueprints. It's just that without them, it wouldn't be as convenient as having an organized equipment arsenal. Afterwards, he briefed the remaining heroes on site about the special circumstances. Fang Hao then began the commendation ceremony. To him, Capturing Grey Iron City was expected, but a one victory still needed to be celebrated. Especially to show appreciation for the heroes and transmigrators who participated in the battle. The banquet started at 9, all heroes and transmigrators who participated in the battle attended. In addition, some native dwarven nobles who were willing to accept Fang Hao's rule also gathered. In the uplifting music, one could hardly see the scene of the recent battle. Before the banquet officially began, Fang Hao briefly kicked off with an opening remark, then went straight to the point. He began commending the officers who commanded well in the battle and soldiers who performed valiantly. Dong Jiayu, as the commander appointed by Fang Hao, had performed really well even at the age of just over 20. Decisive in handling matters, she also willingly listened to others' opinions. Although she didn't end the battle before winter, she still demonstrated great leadership capabilities. As a good friend in this world, Fang Hao certainly wouldn't be stingy. He said loudly, Dong Jiayu deserves the first credit. All the transmigrators were saved by you this time, and they will all be assigned under your command. You will be rewarded with 10,000 warfire coins, 200 sets of purple temple guardian armor, and we will primarily subsidize your city's construction after the new year. Upon hearing the rewards, joy flooded into Dong Jiayu's heart at once. There was a considerable number of transmigrators captured by the dwarves. If she were to govern them, her territory and power would surpass Zhang Bin's and Fu Lei's. The remaining warfire coins and purple sets didn't appeal to her that much. She had the power to utilize the nearby undead, and so these 200 sets of armor were not that useful to her. They would be most useful as outfits for her trusted guard to ensure their safety. The subsidy for her city's development in the new year was also nice as it could speed up her own city's development. She quickly went over it all in her mind. She stepped up and loudly said, "Thank you, my lord." After Dong Jiayu, Fang Hao continued to commend the other heroes. The rewards for the heroes were mainly warfire coins, plus some equipment and living conditions award. After all, when it comes to the undead, especially the undead heroes that were created, there really isn't much to give as rewards. The preceding rewards caused some restlessness among the transmigrators below. They were gathered together, whispering amongst themselves. Damn, that's a lot of money. Jiayu made a fortune. What does money matter? 200 purple suits. Right now, a single piece of purple equipment in the channel is worth a fortune, enough to choose a bride with. Humph. Men. Exactly, I don't like what's available in the channel. I think Xiao Lan is pretty good. Get lost, old man. After individually rewarding the heroes, it was finally the turn of the transmigrators below. Everyone closed their mouths, their eyes filled with anticipation as they looked towards the respected Fang Hao above. Before long, Fang Hao's voice rang out. He said loudly, during this campaign, the transmigrator teams played a crucial role. Each person will receive 1,000 warfire coins, 20 pieces of purple equipment, command of 20,000 undead skeletons, and financial support for your cities in the coming year. Wow! The transmigrators were instantly excited. It was great to really have purple suits and 20,000 undead skeletons. 20,000! And they don't need to eat or sleep. Whether it was for defense, or taking them on adventures, their own strength had increased several times over. Seeing the excitement in the transmigrators below, Fang Hao chuckled. Why are they overreacting? They had witnessed the scale of 1,000,000 strong undead. With the conclusion of the rewards ceremony, Fang Hao waved his hand and the music started again. The banquet officially began. Delicious foods were served and everyone started to move around freely, enjoying the food. Just in an instant, the surrendered dwarf nobles immediately rushed over. They encircled Dong Jiayu and Belerga, showering them with flatteries. They hoped to receive better treatment in Grey Iron City in the future. The dwarfs never expected that Belerga, whom they had driven out of Grey Iron City, would return in this insane manner and reclaim ownership of Grey Iron City. The transmigrators thoroughly relished the food and wine on the table and savored their delightful time. Nobody disturbed them, so they were just continuously eating. These dwarfs sure have big guts. The city has just been breached and they are already fawning over Sister Jiayu, Yang Xiaolan said while eating. Yesterday, I heard Belerga say that the top elites in the city fled through various means. These ordinary nobles are left behind. If they can't escape, what can they do? Should they not try to please us and wait to be executed instead? Are you kidding? We've sealed the city, how can they escape? Obviously, you don't know. They could have used the Alliance's teleportation array, or a teleportation scroll, for example. One scroll could teleport a few people without a problem. So, all the strong ones in the city have escaped. The creme de la creme, probably a few of them. In the hall, people were chatting in small groups. But Fang Hao did not remain at the banquet. Instead, he led a group of undead heroes to the back garden of the royal palace. The plants in the garden were withered, and in the empty center, stacked piles of chests and loot were placed. Hero Spencer said softly, "My lord, these are the spoils of war we gathered. Except for a few dwarf nobles who ran away, we didn't disturb any other dwarfs." Fang Hao nodded. His gaze fell on the loot, chests filled with gold and silver jewels, and various precious objects. A total of 122 chests. Going to the backyard was like going into a mountain of gold. Everything was gold in sight. These dwarfs really did not skimp on their payments. Fang Hao's gaze fell on it. A series of numbers appeared before him. Warfire cards, 1 for 5 million, 2 for 7 million, Warfire coins, 420,000. Dwarf bearded gold, 2.5 million, gold and silver utensils, 3,200 pieces, jewelry, 20,000 pieces. They sure are rich. Chapter 790. Bearded gold is the currency in use within the dwarf camp. On account of the fact that the royal portrait minted on the obverse features a beard taking up more than half the space, and the hue of the gold is somewhat crimson, it's thus named bearded gold. The craftsmanship of the dwarves has always been impeccable, and the exchange rate with Warfire coin is 2 to 1. 2 pieces of bearded gold amount to a single Warfire coin. Quite a stable value. Given that it is a main city of a faction, the amount of objects they managed to amass is considerable. This does not yet include the items in the dwarf's warehouse. After all, Grey Iron City needs to keep on operating. If Fang Hao took everything away, then it would become a dead city. Even so, by searching the royal palace and some dwarf nobles who had fled, he had already amassed quite a fortune. Looking at the piled-up treasures, Fang Hao didn't quite know how to carry them away. His storage space couldn't fit any more. It seems he would need to open several more portals to transport all of these items back. I'll leave it be for now, I'll figure it out when the time comes. Fang Hao continued towards the area covered in treasure chests. The chests were also piled together, there was 1 platinum chest, 12 golden chests, and 18 silver chests. Quite the quantity. Fang Hao went forward, asking in the process, "Didn't you guys say there were only 12 fortresses? Why are there so many treasure chests?" Spencer explained softly, "Along the way, there were many other fortifications and encampments established by the dwarves that Miss Dong Jiao captured successfully." "Oh, so that's how it was. So this is where the chests came from." But Fang Hao didn't expect that Dong Jiao would be so considerate. She didn't open a single chest and left them all for him. But the golden chests and silver chests no longer held any attraction for him. As for the boxes from places like occupied bandit camps and temporary encampments, those were opened by them. Fang Hao never interfered. If the platinum chest could produce the blueprints he needed on the first shot, then the gold and silver chests could be awarded to the transmigrators. After all, most people seldom have the chance to get a golden chest. If the platinum chest's rewards aren't that great, then the gold ones will be opened next and the silver ones left for them. Fang Hao arrived in front of the platinum chest. He opened it straight away. Swish, beams of light appeared instantaneously, blinding to the eye. Obtained, blueprint for craftsmanship and god of furnace fire statue, blueprint for the 5-barrel organ gun, orange, blueprint for grey iron bastion wall upgrade, purple, blueprint for crafting dwarven white titanium defense helmet, blue, blueprint for crafting dwarven white titanium defense chest armor, blue, blueprint for crafting dwarven white titanium defense armor, blue, blueprint for crafting dwarven white titanium defense boots, blue, blueprint for crafting dwarven white titanium defense battle axe, blue, blueprint for crafting dwarven garden lamp, blue, hero recruitment scroll, purple, 352 grey iron stones, 785 warfire coins. Hey! A large batch of blueprints, and it seems he spotted a flash of orange light among them. He held all of the blueprints in his hand, then Fang Hao began to check them all one by one. Craftsmanship and god of furnace fire statue, wood 550, stone 1500, 5 natural gems, 2 essences of magic, 2 traces of prayer. Description: the craftsmanship and god of furnace fire will bless the territory, significantly enhancing craftsmanship and forging techniques. It looks like it is a statue of the dwarf's deity. A pantheon of all gods can be built in the main city, where all the statues can be placed. The improvement in craftsmanship and forging techniques that comes along is also beneficial for the development of the territory. Checking the second item. First level Grey Iron Bastion Wall, Cast Iron Brick 500, Fine Iron Ingot 150, Metal Parts 200, Perfect Essence 1. Description: an iron plaster reinforcement can be applied to the existing wall. The materials required increase with the level of the wall. This is a pretty decent blueprint. The Dwarven defense wall had taken several days of uninterrupted attacks from Dong Jiayu and her team without breaking. Its solidity is simply terrifying. Any other force, with such a large consumption of gunpowder, would have flattened the city. Now that I have the blueprint, I can reinforce the walls of all the cities. A better way to defend against external enemies. Storing the blueprint, he continued to look downwards. 5-barrel organ gun blueprint, orange resilient wood 300, fine iron 500, fine iron ingot 150, white steel plate 100, white steel ingot 80, precision parts 15, traces of wine 3, essence of destruction 3. Description: it is an upgraded form of the 4-barreled organ gun. With formidable attack power, it is capable of annihilating an entire enemy unit in a single round of fire. A dwarf's firearm as expected, and it's even an orange tier blueprint. This is significantly more advanced than the first-generation field gun I obtained. In the dwarves' firearms, this is already considered top tier. It can be said that the blueprints for the Grey Iron Bastion and organ gun alone have added another tier of strength to my territory. Platinum treasure chests are indeed wonderful. Afterward, all were blue tier blueprints. The dwarf specialty defense set is a blue tier set, meaning to suit the dwarf body type, with level 3 defense armor. It has an accompanying attribute Indomitable, which can rapidly recover personal vitality, allowing a return to fighting. Dwarf White Titanium Defense Battle Axe is also a blue tier blueprint, and is not included in the defense set. It possesses a level 3 attack power. Has a 5% chance of breaking the shield. Dwarf Garden Street Lamp, Cast Iron Block 80, Metal Parts 50, Glass Lamp Shade 1. Description: a street lamp that can light the path and also create a certain ambience. A type of street lamp, nothing special. Finally, there is a purple tier hero recruitment scroll, which can be used to recruit a new hero when the time comes. Chapter 791. All blueprints were collected in one place. Deep down, a hint of frustration stirred in Fang Hao. Even though he acquired an orange piece of equipment blueprint, it was just one of the numerous dwarven devices, he hadn't got the others yet. If asked, what does one want most after seizing the dwarf's city? It's not the city or the heroes, but the long-renowned blueprints of dwarf's machines. With his hundredfold enhancer, the blueprints in his hands could play out their maximum advantages. It was a pity, when the dwarf's temper flared, they had burnt their own equipment warehouse. Even the data library was thoroughly razed. Now, his only way to acquire blueprints was through these chests. His gaze again fell onto the remaining chests. Initially, he intended to award these golden and silver chests to Dong Jiayu and a few transmigrators. But now, it seemed he had to open them himself. 12 golden chests were successively opened. Light appeared again. Obtained: blueprint for dwarf white steel shotgun, green; blueprint for leather-wrapped white steel ore draft, blue; blueprint for hardwood cannon bullet box, green; 2 gold-traced large vases, 75 grey iron stones, 202 warfire coins. Obtained: blueprint for mithril spiked double-bladed axe, purple; iron pellet blueprint, green; dwarf dining table blueprint, green; 89 grey iron stones, 228 warfire coins. Obtained: cannon bullet blueprint, blue; white steel ore track blueprint, blue; dwarf black iron machete blueprint, green; 101 grey iron stones, 245 warfire coins. Obtained: green forest shotgun blueprint, green; blueprint for giant deer hide saddle, green; 5 pheasant baits, 95 grey iron stones, 202 warfire coins. Obtained: dwarf cannon blueprint, purple; dwarf thick leather boot blueprint, green; Ishgard double bathhouse blueprint, green; dwarf bookcase blueprint, green; 121 grey iron stones, 217 warfire coins. Obtained: brave shotgun blueprint, blue, hardwood small firearm bullet box blueprint, green, 1 silver beard clamp, dwarf carved screen, 150*70, 175 grey iron stones, 321 warfire coins. Obtained, leather wrapped white steel sickle blueprint, blue, ivy white arch bridge build blueprint, green, hardwood lifting equipment build blueprint, green, 1 green forest fire gun, 2 silver trimmed narrow mouth vases, 146 grey iron stones, 275 warfire coins. Obtained, flame furnace build blueprint, purple, Eorzea garden fountain build blueprint, green, 2 deer horn brass bells, 1 white steel kitchen knife, 15 dwarf white marble stone plates, 121 grey iron stones, 245 warfire coins. Obtained, wind breaking crossbow cart blueprint, purple, white steel or car blueprint, blue, black iron single-edged axe blueprint, green, 5 deer horn goblets, 89 grey iron stones, 299 warfire coins. Obtained, dwarf thick leather chest armor blueprint, green, dwarf steel nail boot blueprint, green, 5 giant deer, 1 golden headband, 1 hard leather gun holster, 93 grey iron stones, 274 warfire coins. Obtained, dwarf breaking enemy armor blueprint, blue, mithril small round shield blueprint, blue, 2 mining goggles, 24 organ cannon bullets, 50 steel bullets, 78 grey iron stones, 248 warfire coins. Obtained, dwarf single barrel telescope blueprint, blue, anti-aircraft crossbow arrow blueprint, blue, dwarf fine iron machete blueprint, blue, 5 golden ruby beard clamps, 1 silver windmill, 12 cannon bullets, 1 dwarf fine carved bookcase, 102 grey iron stones, 300 warfire coins. Whoosh! After opening all of them, regret flooded Fang Hao. The spacious backyard instantly became scattered with all kinds of blueprints covering the ground. Among them were vases, bookcases, boxes full of cannon bullets, a mound of disarrayed items, and several disoriented giant deer nibbling on withered flowers off to the side. Oh boy, what a mess! Fang Hao flipped through his records again, feeling a surge of delight. Indeed, the haul from 12 golden chests had made up for the items that weren't in the platinum chest. Ignoring the green and blue blueprints for now, he looked first at the purple blueprints and items. Mithril spiked double-bladed axe, 1 thick leather, 72 iron blocks, 5 fine irons, 5 mithril. Description: a spiked double-bladed axe commonly used by dwarves. Besides the normal chop and jab, it gives an extra lacerating injury. A battle axe used by the dwarves. With an extra lacerating effect, it was quite a good dwarf weapon. Later, it can be assigned to the dwarves or the skeleton trolls as a thrown axe weapon. However, this weapon consumes fine iron and mithril. Throwing it all over the place would prevent efficient recycling and could be troublesome. Moving on. Dwarf cannon, 550 iron, 280 cast iron blocks, 50 fine irons, 85 metal parts, 15 precision parts, 2 essence of destruction. Description: improved version of the dwarf's cannon, it is more stable and handy while having greater lethality. Seeing this reward gave Fang Hao another rush of joy. A blueprint for a cannon, as expected, could be come upon in the golden chest. Among the loot Dong Jiao captured, there was such equipment as a cannon. Its size was smaller and more handy than the first-gen field cannon Fang Hao had made. It could be used as a defensive device installed on the city wall, or it could be fit with wheels and deployed outdoors for firepower cover. It was both powerful and compact. Chapter 792. The most distinct feature of a cannon is that adding it to a wall significantly boosts the defensive capability. Flame furnace, stone brick 1200, fine stone brick 800, cast iron block 520, fine iron 120, metal parts 1500, red flame essence 3, traces of wine 2, grey iron stone 5. Description: a massive furnace constructed by dwarves, the flame furnace undertakes 80% of dwarf forging work. A purple blueprint of the furnace. The single orange large furnace on 8 Peaks Mountain is hard-pressed to handle the workforce of the entire race. But, the flame furnace shoulders a majority of the forging work. It could be considered as an upgraded version of the furnace. Wind-breaking crossbow cart, tough wood 850, ironized wood 520, cast iron block 220, metal parts 800, precision parts 200, traces of hurricane 2. Description: a rapid-fire crossbow cart produced by dwarves. Its massive power, fast firing rate, keeping even dragons at bay. The last purple blueprint also pertains to dwarf equipment. This soothes Fang Hao's mind a bit. At least, he has acquired all the most effective equipment. As for the other blueprints that were burnt, losing them does not feel that regrettable anymore. All the blueprints are collected. Streams of light instantly drilled into the Book of Lords. A giant, horned deer nibbling on dry grass nearby was startled and ran off in the distance where it continued to chew the twigs. This time, Fang Hao acquired 3 dwarf devices, 5 pipe organ cannon, dwarf cannon and wind-breaking crossbow cart. At the same time, the blueprints of ammunition for these 3 weapons were also unlocked. From now on, whenever needed, Fang Hao can manufacture weapons and ammunitions on a large scale and arm his army. To make the enemies truly aware of the principle, whoever is within range, is under threat. In addition to these 3 devices, the acquired leather-wrapped white steel ore draft, white steel ore rail, white steel ore cart were also very useful blueprints. It could significantly increase mining efficiency. By then, Fang Hao could distribute them to all the major mines. Fang Hao was also quite interested in brave shotgun and dwarf monocular telescope blueprints. There was even a finished product of the brave shotgun. It takes the form of a small handle musket, that is, a handgun. Shiny silver material, glittering and reflecting. Intricate and beautiful floral patterns were carved on the surface. At first glance, it appeared to be a craftsman's work of art. Though, after toying with it for a while, Fang Hao lost interest. This small-handled musket could serve as a craft, but in combat, the reloading speed after a shot is rather slow. If the enemy isn't dead, you have to draw the knife and charge. As for the other blueprints, Fang Hao lost interest. They were all dwarf items, currently of no use to him. He ordered people to clean up the backyard. At this time, Dimitrija came over. "Sir, Miss Dong Jiayu and Lady Amanda are here." The banquet in the hall was still ongoing. Fang Hao was curious, wondering why the 2 ladies were looking for him. Noticing that the backyard had been cleaned up and the stag had been led away, he nodded and said, "Let them in." "Yes." It wasn't long before Dimitrija returned. Behind him were Dong Jiayu and Amanda, as well as a huge block of gold being hauled by human militiamen on a cart. A head peeking out from one side of the gold block. A beautiful face, purple eyes, pointy ears, light purple skin female. Fang Hao was startled, thinking the gold block sprouted a head. But he soon saw her attribute name. Shadow Stabber Morse, Purple Tier 3 Hero. Chapter 793. What's going on here? Fang Hao asked curiously, looking at the cart that had been pushed up to him. The person on the cart had long black hair, a delicate face, deep purple eyes, and pointed ears peeked out beneath her tresses. What stood out most, however, was her light purple skin. She somewhat resembled the elves described in the records. Legend has it that elves, both male and female, are extraordinarily beautiful. Even Rebecca, who only has half-elven blood, is considered a top beauty in the Federation. But this light purple skin? It's unlikely that she's poisoned. Morse, who was restrained by the lump of gold, glanced at him and then weakly laid back down, looking resigned to her fate. Dong Jiaeo was the first to speak. "She's our prisoner. While attacking the dwarves, she came to assassinate me at the camp but was captured by Queen Amanda. Then she was sent to assassinate Rune. Her successful attack caused internal problems in Grey Iron City, paving the way for us to capture the city." "Ah, so it was her." Last night, Dong Jiaeo had roughly explained the situation of the attack on the city. Knowing that they had arranged an assassin to just straight-up butcher Rune, this caused chaos within Grey Iron City, and the undead captured the city seizing this opportunity. Surprisingly, it was the assassin Rune hired herself who turned around and assassinated Rune. This operation, they could actually think of it too. So, what's happening now? Fang Hao was a bit confused about the 2 women's intention. Since she helped them by killing Rune, why was she still held down by the enormous lump of gold? Moreover, she seemed half dead and on her last breaths. Hearing Fang Hao's question, Amanda responded. Her tone as always was devoid of any particular emotion. "I promised to help her break the contract to serve the territory." "Uh-huh. That's some good news, seems like recruiting a hero for our territory." "No need, just let me." "UFH." Morse, lying on the cart, was just halfway through her sentence. The golden liquid turned into a ball of gold and blocked her mouth. Her words were completely stifled. Thus, Morse almost suffocated and slipped into unconsciousness in an instant. Fang Hao curiously asked, "Can we invalidate her contract?" He's familiar with the concept of contracts. Slave contracts are a type of law contract. Once signed, it's just like signing an indenture, unless the master permits, it will bind the person indefinitely. However, it seems like other people don't have any method to interfere and terminate a contract. Amanda answered, "The contract on her demands her to keep secrets. This contract can be cancelled. The corpse which has the ability to trick the death god, hence she can deceive the contract. Of course, it comes with a price, the materials required aren't cheap, and after breaking the contract, she will be weak for a while. The power of a contract is added on the soul. The ability to cheat the death god targets the soul. According to Amanda, they could help her to break the contract. In that case, Nelson can do it." Fang Hao nodded. His gaze turned to the purple-skinned woman on the cart. He softly asked, "Based on your agreement with Amanda, you will be working for the territory." You. The purple woman's eyes went wide, and she tried to mumble something from her mouth. It seemed like she was desperately trying to express something. However, Amanda had never removed the metal ball from her mouth, so no one could understand what she was trying to say. Fang Hao didn't bother to clarify what she wanted to express, he just nodded and said, "When we go back, bring her along." On the side, Dong Jiao was eagerly looking at Fang Hao with bright eyes, her face is full of anticipation. Her gaze held a mix of eagerness and anticipation. She and Amanda had caught the woman, and even though they now had quite a few transmigrators, they didn't have a single hero. The recent assassination attempt had made her realize the importance of heroes. They could save your life at critical moments. Looking at Fang Hao's side, he had heroes aplenty. At this point, she despised the blue and green heroes. In her team, their role was similar to that of a squad leader. Comparing others could just make you boil from rage. Seeing her expression, Fang Hao was taken aback at first, but then he understood what Dong Jiao meant. Well, he did have quite a number of heroes at his disposal, and now that Dong Jiao was managing a larger and larger area, she indeed needed someone to ensure her safety. He ruffled her hair. The loyalty of a hero recruited as a prisoner would be quite low, it's not safe. You can use this purple recruitment scroll, then you'll have your own hero. He handed her the newly obtained purple recruitment scroll. Yay! Dong Jiao clenched her fist in excitement as she took the scroll. At the same time, Fang Hao continued, "Here are 18 silver chests and also these flower vases, bookshelves, and other stuff. I'm giving all of these to you. Later on, you can use them as rewards for your subordinates." "Got it, thanks Brother Hao." Dong Jiao was over the moon. She had been contemplating whether she should reward her subordinates after this expedition, considering they had fought for her in the winter. She had no idea what to reward them with earlier. But now, her reward had arrived. In the afternoon, around 2 o'clock. The banquet in the royal palace ended. The local dwarves left, and the few transmigrators were taken away by Dong Jiao to receive their separate rewards. Fang Hao returned to the now empty royal palace. He walked directly up to the throne and took a seat. The moment he sat down, the system prompt appeared in front of his eyes. Chapter 794. Grey Iron City has become your affiliated city. You may rename the city and have control over 12 subsidiary cities and 18 fortress encampments. The population of the dwarves is indeed small. This is a main city after all, and that's all for the affiliated cities. Grey Iron City. City level, 15 level original city. Attributes, firearm manufacturing plus 30%, device research and development plus 25%, smelting/forging plus 25%, mining plus 30%, dwarf reproduction plus 25%. Description: a city with attributes can bring various different enhancement effects, speeding up the city's construction and development. The city of the dwarves also ranks at 15. It's the same level as Silverwing City, and the attributes gained in the city are also somewhat more than those of ordinary cities. Especially in device research and development, and smelting and forging. These are very good attributes. Blueprints unlocked: Ancestor Altar, Precision Factory, Giant Antler Deer Corridor, Roasted Tea Workshop, Arsenal, Device Research Institute. There are not a few blueprints unlocked with the city. Ancestor Altar. Category: Special Building. Ability, Sacrifice. Sacrifice, the dwarves can gain the blessings of their ancestors through sacrifice. Race restriction, dwarf. Description, the ancestors will always bless their descendants. Construction requirements, resilient wood 1200, brick 2500, iron 850, traces of prayer 5, traces of the spirit 1, perfect essence 1. An altar of sacrifice, but with a racial restriction. That is, it only blesses dwarves, other races can't benefit from it. They won't consider you, no need to cling to relatives. Precision factory. Category, special building. Description, the factory holds a lathe that can produce relatively precise products. Construction requirements, brick 1200, cast iron block 1000, fine iron 220, metal parts 1500, precision parts 850. A lathe factory, where the precise parts and devices are made. Giant antler deer corridor, resilient wood 1500, brick 1800, metal parts 520. Roasted tea workshop, timber 2250, stone material 1800, hemp rope 1200, leather 800, metal parts 1580. Arsenal, resilient wood 2200, good craftsmanship brick 3500, metal parts 2550. These three blueprints don't offer any special enhancements. The arsenal should be a separate warehouse for storing arms, but it doesn't provide any special restraints. Now, only the last blueprint is left. Device Research Institute. Category, Special Building. Effects, Inspiration, Concentration. Inspiration, enhances the inspiration of the researchers. Concentration, helps the researchers to concentrate more during research. Description, a building that carries out important research. Fang Hao has finished looking at all the blueprints. The results were quite satisfying. He got the desired device from the treasure chest, and Grey Iron City is another city at level 15. It can be said, the gains were quite huge. Moreover, after occupying 8 Peaks Mountain, his own territory is now shaped more like a concave, encapsulating the human federation in the middle. The north side of the 100 cities of the humans is his main city, and the west is bordering 8 Peaks Mountain. If any conflicts occur, they can attack from both sides, pressuring the humans even more. Fang Hao sat on the throne, feeling the real sensation of a king. Master, someone wishes to see you, a dwarf guard reported. Now, the guards in the royal palace have been taken over by Belarga's people. From now on, this Grey Iron City will be managed by Belarga. Let them in, Fang Hao said. Soon, 2 unfamiliar transmigrators walked in. They lowered their heads, appearing somewhat restrained. They were carrying a large piece of paper. The moment they walked in, before Fang Hao could speak, they knelt down. We greet Lord Fang Hao, thank you for saving us. Wow! That startled me. No need for that, get up and sit down, Fang Hao immediately said. The 2 men carefully looked at each other, then got up and sat down on the side. While sitting, they only sat with half of their buttocks on the edge of the chair, looking very careful. Fang Hao observed both of them, one in his 40s and one in his 20s. Both men looked a bit worn out, covered in dust, they looked like they just got back from a mine. Since the 2 men didn't speak, Fang Hao asked, "Why are you looking for me? You don't have to worry about anything in the future. You can go back to your own cities and continue managing your cities." The 2 men glanced at each other. They hurriedly said, "Boss, we wanted you to look at this. The dwarves had us design this, and it's nearly finished." After the older man, in his 40s, finished speaking, he brought forward the paper. But he was stopped by Dimitrija, who took the paper and handed it to Fang Hao. Fang Hao had noticed the paper in their hands long ago. He curiously opened it, but his brows furrowed as he saw what was inside. A revolver. Various parts were depicted on the blueprint, and a complete image was also drawn. It was unmistakably a revolver from the modern world. The dwarves are actually researching this? Fang Hao immediately guessed the identity of the 2 men. Bolt-action rifle, did you guys help the dwarves improve it? Thud. Hearing Fang Hao's words, they both kneeled down heavily. The man in his 40s explained tearfully, "The dwarves made it, I didn't want this to happen. I really didn't." The older man was named Cao Junming and the young man was Miao Chao. Cao Junming did not exactly have a professional knowledge in weapons manufacturing, but he had worked at a shooting range abroad and had touched upon some gun repairs. Chapter 795. After he transmigrated to this side, he wanted to use his technology to secure a better life among the dwarves. He proposed the concept of bolt-action rifles to the dwarves and gained their attention. Miao Chao, who was proficient in data and sketching, helped Cao Junming with blueprint measurements, calibration and creation. Being brought along by Cao Junming this time, he also had a sense of being swept up in the current. Fang Hao, watching the two men below, knew nothing of their experiences. There are more than a few instances of transmigrators relying on their knowledge to curry favor with powerful natives. In fact, it was quite serendipitous. But causing such a huge influence, and leading to the violent capture of transmigrators by the dwarves, it was indeed the first of its kind. All right, let's sit down and talk. Fang Hao had no intention of pursuing the matter further. Thank you, thank you. Cao Junming quickly thanked him and took his seat again. Fang Hao continued, so, why have you two brought blueprints? What's on your mind? Cao Junming squinted, Brother Fang Hao, the blueprint for the revolver is almost complete. I want to produce it to strengthen your power. As expected. Guns are such things. Sooner or later, they will become widespread in this world. There are a large number of transmigrators who know about guns, especially those from places that are not gun-free zones. There should be quite a few who understand firearms. Cao Junming was able to produce bolt-action rifles ahead of time by leveraging the craftsmanship of the dwarves. All sorts of guns will eventually be manufactured. If a revolver could be made, it would undoubtedly replace the common short-barreled matchlocks. To an army, rifles are still the most beneficial while the effects of revolvers cater more to personal safety. Sure, the Research Institute of Grey Iron City will be re-established, and you can continue perfecting the revolver there, Fang Hao directly stated. There was no significant change in Cao Junming's expression, he probably anticipated this response. He continued, Brother Fang Hao, what kind of treatment can I expect? Fang Hao scrutinized him carefully. He always felt that Cao Junming was somewhat cunning, especially when his eyes darted around when he spoke. Are you giving up your city? My city has been abandoned for too long, I want to live in the city, Cao Junming replied. After thinking it over, Fang Hao decided to make some concessions. All right, I'll discuss this matter with Lord Belerga and give you the same treatment as other developers. If there are any technological breakthroughs, I'll reward you separately, offered Fang Hao. Cao Junming was somewhat disappointed. When he arrived, he saw a group of transmigrators being given a lot of artifacts. Especially two people holding large vases, which were clearly from the dwarf palace. He thought that by producing the blueprint for the revolver, he would be able to exchange it for some good stuff. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like Fang Hao was thinking along those lines. With the conversation at this point, all he could do was nod, thank you, Brother Fang Hao. Fang Hao then turned to the 20 or so young men standing behind, would you also like to settle in the city? Miao Chao shook his head, no, I want to go back and continue developing my city. Brother, I'm good at drafting and mechanical drawing. I can help with any related tasks. Miao Chao gave a straightforward impression. I'll keep that in mind. You can return to your city, and I'll ask Belerga to accommodate you within the Research Institute. Involvement in some development work would benefit you, responded Fang Hao. Oh, thank you, brother. Having discussed the matters, the two didn't stay longer than necessary and made their way out of the royal palace. The next day, accompanied by Belerga, Fang Hao visited Grey Iron City. In particular, a towering statue of a king in the city center proved to be quite breathtaking. Unlike the golden statue of the queen, the past statues of dwarves were made of grey stone and cast iron. It gave off a robust industrial vibe. He visited the residential areas, the ancestral altar, and the research institute and warehouse undergoing restoration. Gradually, Grey Iron City was restoring order. They passed through the city to the hillside behind. Huge statues of kings were carved on the tall cliff. The seventh was Rune, whose carving was only half complete when work stopped. Looking at the stone carvings on the mountainside, Fang Hao was reminded of the mountain of Hokage statues in Naruto. Sir, I plan to have your figure added as well. As the eighth leader, Belerga looked up at the cliff face and proposed. Chapter 796. As for me, I'll pass. After all, you're in charge of Grey Iron City now, so you can add your own portrait. Fang Hao shook his head in refusal. He didn't think that adding his own portrait to the mountain wall was a good idea. Being pelted with eggs every day and scorned by the dwarves wouldn't be pleasant. On the other hand, there was Belarga. According to his description, the position which the original king held should have been his. However, he was driven out by Rune. Belarga's wish has always been to reclaim his position. Yet, when he left, he never imagined that he would take over Grey Iron City through the undead, reclaiming everything he had lost. Indeed, when Fang Hao proposed that Belarga carve his portrait, the system prompt appeared. Ironbeard Belarga's loyalty to you increases by 15 points, current loyalty is 95. Belarga's loyalty had directly reached 95 points. Just 5 more points and it would be full. Thank you, my lord. Belarga expressed his sincere thanks. The two of them, accompanied by the guards, continued to walk through the city. They further inspected the well-preserved granaries and various material warehouses. Especially the dwarven mine yard, the quantity had even reached a terrifying number. Tremendous reserves of various types of minerals such as fine iron, mithril, white titanium, spirit silver, hard steel, and manganese steel could be found. Flame furnaces were also built in large scale throughout the city, for the continuous refinement of these minerals. However, just after the end of the major war, these furnaces had all ceased operation. While the building clusters looked magnificent, they were mostly empty. Fang Hao asked Belarga about the mineral deposits. Belarga also gave an explanation. 8 Peaks Mountain was of a vast territory. The 12 fortresses and various camps could not fully represent the dwarfs' settlements. Aside from these, there were many towns and camps built for mining purposes. 8 Peaks Mountain had abundant mineral resources, which was the primary reason why the dwarves settled here. The gemstone demands and mineral needs of Grey Iron City were supplied by these mines, forming the main income source of the dwarves. Each year, the devices sold to various forces were maintaining the dwarves' expenses. Now with the war over, Belarga had arranged for people to notify the mines that he was now their new master. Those mines had little military force anyway, so there was no fear of resistance. Even if they did resist, a cut-off in the supply from Grey Iron City in the middle of this harsh winter would leave them no chance of survival. The two men continued to walk and chat, finally returning to the royal palace. Just as they arrived, they saw Dong Jieyu directing her subordinates in their final organization efforts. With everything completed, they were preparing to go back to the city for wintering. By Dong Jieyu's side were a couple of troll heroes, each standing about 5 meters tall, with very dark skin. Their enormous figures within the dwarven city were like terrifying monsters. Each of them had a large double-bladed axe on their back, wearing armor full of battle scars. They were sitting on the ground, loading goods onto carts. They looked a bit clumsy, hardly giving out the impression of being particularly bright. It seems, the recruitment scroll she was given yesterday was used, producing a troll hero. Jiayu! Fang Hao called out. Dong Jieyu turned around, ran over in small steps, and spent a moment teasing the Red General on Angia's shoulder. After being swatted away, she asked, "Brother Hao, any instructions?" "No particular instructions. Just asking about Cao Junming and Miao Chao," replied Fang Hao. Dong Jieyu gave a slight pause. "I know them." "What happened?" "Yesterday, they came to find me with some blueprints. Junming Cao wishes to stay in the city and has no plan to return to his own." "What can you tell me about their character?" Fang Hao shared his thoughts. The news seemed to darken Dong Jieyu's countenance. As the one in charge of managing all the transmigrators, she was bypassed by those two who went to see Fang Hao directly with their blueprints. This upset her. After a moment of thought, she replied, "Cao Junming's reputation is not good. From what I heard from the rescued transmigrators, he already considers himself a dwarf. The bad ideas the dwarves had were suggested by him. There are even incidents of him pressuring female transmigrators. Miao Chao, on the other hand, is relatively normal. He can be considered Cao Junming's aide. He doesn't talk much and there's nothing especially noteworthy about him." Fang Hao nodded, indicating that he understood. "I assigned him to work in the research institute for now. I'll get Belarga to keep an eye on him in the future." "All right." "Oh, what blueprint did he bring to you?" Dong Jieyu breathed on her palm for warmth. "A revolver." "A revolver? That explains it. That guy certainly does have talent. Let him spend time on research then." Fang Hao smiled and continued, you have more and more people under your command. Also make an effort to understand what skills they have, we have talents to gather. Definitely, once we've gathered the transmigrators, our development will surely speed up, Dong Jiao agreed with him. Yes, anything urgent, contact me via the Book of Lords. Be careful on your way back. Okay. Dong Jiao agreed, then turned to run back to her team. All the transmigrators under her command crowded around, asking if the big boss Fang Hao had any new assignments. The most up-to-date novels are published on Fruitnoelo. Fang Hao stayed in Grey Iron City for 2 more days. After which, he used a teleportation spell to return to his own city. After greeting Ira and the heroes stationed there, Fang Hao began to construct the architectural blueprints he had acquired this time. Chapter 797. First, he arrived at the central city square. In the Pantheon, a new statue of the craftsmanship and furnace fire god was added. Craftsmanship and furnace fire god statue, wood 550, stone 1500, natural gem 5, essence of magic 2, traces of prayer 2. Description: the god of craftsmanship and furnace fire will bless this territory, greatly improving craftsmanship and forging technologies. Construction confirmed. The light rose. After the light gradually faded, the statue appeared before his eyes. The statue depicted a strong figure wielding a forging hammer, ready to strike. From its proportions, it seemed powerful, not modeling after the short stature of dwarves. Craftsmanship and furnace fire god statue. Category: Special building. Effect: Craftsmanship plus 10%, Forging plus 10%. Description: the god of craftsmanship and furnace fire, will bless this territory. Craftsmanship and forging have increased. After placing the statue in the Pantheon, he proceeded to the city wall. Upon reaching the city walls, the 12-story walls, tall and sturdy. Observation towers and magic towers stood atop the walls, keeping an eye on any movement in the distance. Fang Hao began to use the Grey Iron Bastion upgrade blueprint on the city wall. Level 12 Grey Iron Bastion Wall, Cast Iron Blocks 6000, Fine Iron Ingots 1000, Metal Parts 2400, Mithril 300, Perfect Essence 12. The blueprint of Grey Iron Bastion belongs to the second upgrade blueprints for buildings. That is to say, it will remodel on the basis of the original city wall. And the materials consumed by the 12-story city wall were already extravagant. Especially the fine iron ingots, reaching up to 1000. Simply, the consumption was outrageous. But the sturdiness of the walls of Grey Iron City was equally astonishing. For his own safety, these materials are worth spending. Upgrade confirmed. A light enveloped the wall. A layer of iron grey metal completely wrapped the city wall. From the outside, it looked identical to the walls of Grey Iron City. Now, even if his city couldn't withstand the level 15 Grey Iron City, it was more than enough to handle ordinary attacks. After these 2 constructions, Fang Hao continued to construct flame furnace, precision factory, tea roasting workshop, arsenal and equipment research institute in the city. The flame furnace and precision factory were for the use of the skeleton blacksmith, so he built them near the smithy. On the other hand, he built the tea roasting workshop at the edge of the production area. The operation of the workshop required tea leaves. Fang Hao planned to get some plantation from the dwarves next year and recruit some people from the rabbit and foxman villages for tea roasting. As for the arsenal, it was built at the edge of the warehouse area. Because it would be storing gunpowder and shells, it was a considerable distance from the warehouse to avoid any accidents. The Equipment Research Institute was located near the Lord's Mansion in the industrial area. Currently, it was empty as there were no talents in the territory who could contribute to the research. They would have to be cultivated slowly. After the construction, Fang Hao continued to produce a large number of 5-pipe organ guns, dwarf cannons, and wind-breaking crossbow carts. He had the skeleton troll lift them up to the city wall in groups. Cannons appeared on the city wall one after another. In an instant, the defensive city wall became full of deterrence and destructive power. With the power of a hundredfold amplification, the number of cannons was also considerable. Even after the city wall was full of cannons, quite a few cannons remained on the vacant land in front of him. Fang Hao thought for a moment. Opened the territory channel. Sent an edited message. Dong Jiao and her 13 affiliated transmigrators, for their meritorious service in the war, each will receive 1 5-pipe organ gun, 2 dwarf cannons, 2 anti-air crossbow carts, and Dong Jiao gets double. Once this was said, the channel immediately exploded. Damn, what war! Boss is directly rewarding cannons, why didn't I catch up? 5 pipe organ guns? I have seen a 4-pipe organ gun for sale in the Trade Alliance, sold for several million warfire coins. The boss is simply giving them away for free, which is outrageous. Dong Jiayu, thank you, I'll collect it when I return to the city. Thanks to boss Fang Hao. Thanks to boss Fang Hao. Dong Jiayu and other transmigrators also spoke up, expressing their gratitude. They were happy and envied by other transmigrators. Especially when someone got to know the price of an organ gun was several million, and it was an orange equipment. Orange, in the transmigrators' minds, was equivalent to a divine artifact. If they possess this divine artifact, who would be afraid of bandits or beasts? All must die at its command. I'm envious, I want it too. Boss Fang Hao, do I have a chance? I can pay money to buy it, give me a chance. There are too many bandits here, I need a cannon to teach them a lesson. Boss, give me a chance. In the territory channel, there were many cries for help. Not long after, Fang Hao's second message was sent out. Members of the territory can purchase purple-level dwarf cannons for 50,000 warfire coins each, 6 cannon shells for 300 warfire coins per box, 1 anti-air crossbow cart for 30,000 warfire coins, and 24 crossbow arrows for 100 warfire coins per bundle. Reselling and gifting are not allowed. There was a brief silence in the channel. Even though they knew, the price of the equipment of the purple level was already considered internal pricing for them. Still, very few people could afford this much money. For a moment, it was quiet. After a while, someone sent a message. I want it, here's your money, and 50 more rifles. Damn, rich lady. West of Silver Wing City. Chapter 798. It was a local village. Li Rong, along with her group of over 50 men, were crammed inside a wooden house. The doors and windows were tightly shut, making the inside of the wooden house dark and gloomy. Outside the house were people dressed in armor and carrying all sorts of weapons. Like bandits and marauders, they had the house completely surrounded. Li Rong, stop resisting. If you keep this up, your big brother is going to get angry, and what happens next will be more than just taking your men's lives. The man at the front was speaking loudly with an extraordinarily rampant tone. Li Rong peered through the cracks in the wooden window, looking at those outside, her eyes filled with murderous intent. She'd received news a few days ago that anyone who could provide a certain amount of food to this village could annex it. Li Rong had abundant resources and had been worrying about a shortage of labor. Therefore, she thought she could come and turn the village into a subsidiary one, just like Fang Hao, and set up factories in the village. Who would have guessed, all of this was a trap? As soon as she had arrived, she fell into an ambush. After losing some of her men, they took refuge in this wooden house. Now, they were trapped in the house, in a very dangerous situation. Who are you? I don't recall knowing you before. Li Rong shouted out to the outside. The enemy was a transmigrator with numerous men under him. She thought for a long time but couldn't identify who he was from her memory. But without any grudges, how could he put so much effort into laying this ambush for her? Haha. We did meet, but you were still the sister Li from Fairy Dream Tower then, and didn't remember me. But now, our positions have reversed. Isn't this the wheel of fortune turning? The man laughed heartily. Li Rong looked at him more closely. In his 40s, with a scruffy face and rough skin. She really couldn't remember him. Have I offended you? Li Rong continued to ask. Well, no, you didn't. Then why are you attacking me here? The man licked his chapped, frost-bitten lips and scoffed, if I tell you now and you spread the news, then what? Don't worry. When we're in bed later, I'll tell you everything mouth to mouth. Thinking about Li Rong's face and figure, a fire ignited in the man's heart. I wonder if the big sister of Silver Wing City would be as cold as she usually is in bed. Faced with such foul language, Li Rong's face was especially grim. But the current situation didn't allow her to let things escalate for the worse. Suppressing the anger in her heart, she continued, we're all transmigrators. We should help each other. If I've offended you in any way before, I apologize. Please don't be petty with me. If you let us go, I'll give you 20% of Fairy Dream Tower's profits later. We can both win then. How about it? This. The man was taken aback, and his heart was moved in an instant. The fairy dream tower in Silver Wing City was a gold mine. Although it's still being rebuilt, once it's up and running the profits would definitely be high. Without lifting a finger, he'd get 20%, which was basically free money. For a moment, he hesitated. Seeing that the man was wavering, Li Rong sighed with relief. Just as she was about to continue persuading, she saw the man take out the Book of Lords and started inputting something. Li Rong's heart sank. He was contacting someone. Which meant, he might be acting under someone else's orders to ambush her. This thought made Li Rong's heart sink to its lowest point. If the people outside were not the instigators, the chance of negotiation would decrease significantly. Sure enough, the man put down the Book of Lords in his hand, rubbed his frost-bitten hands, and said, "Little lady, are you trying to pull a fast one on me? Once I capture you, the fairy dream tower will be mine anyway. Why bother with 20% of the profits when I can have it all?" Chapter 799. She stared at the angry man outside. Li Rong's brows furrowed again. This man must be insane. How on earth is he still alive? It's a miracle that he hasn't been eliminated despite the frequent eliminations. The man glanced at the message from the Book of Lords and shouted, "Li Rong, come out now, I promise not to kill you and I'll treat you well. But if you don't..." Before he finished speaking, a voice from within the house retorted, "Go screw yourself." Veins on the man's forehead popped out in anger, and he ordered coldly, "Since they refuse to come out, set the house on fire. Let's see if they'd rather be burned alive or killed by us." Charging indirectly would inevitably lead to substantial losses. The dry weather, coupled with the wooden house, was perfect for setting a fire. His soldiers quickly went to find dried grass and torches. The plan was to set the wooden house on fire, forcing Li Rong and her group out, making them far easier to kill. Seeing the people outside preparing for action, the people inside the wooden house were even more apprehensive. "My lord, let's break out. We'll protect you even if it costs us our lives," the soldiers said. Li Rong had brought 50 heavy sword infantry along with her. This wasn't arrogance but the result of Silver Wing City's safe surroundings. There were no bandits or outlaws around, and occasional wild beasts were too afraid to approach a 50-man crew. Who would have thought that a transmigrator would attack her? Despite her crew all being tier 5, 50 against 300 still didn't give her a high chance of victory. It wasn't just about whether she could escape. The soldiers she brought were doomed. Seeing people already bringing torches, Li Rong said, "I'll check the situation first. You all get ready to break out." If there was no other way, she could only choose to break out. Opening the Book of Lords, she was about to fill Fang Hao in on the situation. That's when she saw Fang Hao was selling cannons in the territory channel. Such things were never sold externally in the past. Seeing the price of 50,000 for a cannon and separate charges for shells, Li Rong felt a stab in her heart. But looking at the people outside, she had no choice but to grit her teeth and buy them. "I'll buy them. Send me the money and 50 rifles," she said. Someday, she would get her savings back from Fang Hao. Soon enough. A cannon appeared in the center of the wooden house, along with 6 boxes of shells, 50 rifles and a wooden crate full of ammunition. Li Rong was overjoyed. She urged them in a low voice, "Quick, grab the rifles and prepare to open fire." Afterward, she instructed everyone on how to use the rifles. Li Rong had borrowed a rifle from Fang Hao before and knew how to operate it. However, her aim wasn't great. She merely pulled the trigger in the direction of people. After instructing them on the rifles, she had 2 people start familiarizing themselves with the large cannon in the middle. There was a rapid approach of footsteps from outside, and the enemy troops were getting closer, holding torches. Just then, the window was pushed open. Several rifles poked out, pointing directly across the distance. The man who was previously waiting arms crossed, his face turned pale as he saw the barrels of the guns. "What the..." Before he could finish, the gunfire rang out. Bang 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 bang. Bullets flew out, hitting the soldiers holding torches, who dropped their torches and fell. The bullet barrage knocked down a large number of enemies, causing chaos. The transmigrator man screamed in terror, "Charge, kill them, rush in there. There's only so many guns they can stick out the window. Charge!" There was no time to care about the wounded at this point. Speeding up the attack was the important thing. As for running away, there were so many of them. Why should they run? Besides, could they outrun bullets? Prodded by the man, the soldiers charged towards the wooden house, trying to avoid the windows and started to charge. Charge! The men rushed forward. Yet, the few guns protruding from the window could not show much firepower. Just when the man felt they were about to invade the wooden house, the tightly shut door slowly started to open. Raid? Ha, you're too late. So many of my men died, you all will pay the price, the man roared. But when the wooden door opened, the man's forehead was covered in cold sweat. A cannon. The bursting cannon pointed at the enemy who was flocking and trying to barge in. Before he could say anything, a loud boom resonated. Boom bang. The shock wave swept over everyone, and the flying debris hit everyone like bullets. Due to the close proximity, even the wooden house was affected. It seemed as if it had been devastated, torn apart by the flying debris. Li Rong dragged herself from the ruins, with a ringing noise in her ears and blurred vision. She forced herself to quickly recover by knocking her head. Feeling someone helping her, she managed to stand up, swaying slightly. When her vision cleared, she found that the wooden house had become a ruin, and a huge crater had been created in the open area outside of the house. All around were rocks and bits of scattered flesh. The power of the cannon was too great. If not for the wooden house to block some impact, they would have been seriously injured. Then, she heard sounds coming from not far away. Turning her head, she saw the man with a few survivors, attempting to escape. Catch him! Li Rong yelled. Yes, sir. The soldiers hoisted their rifles and chased after him, firing as they went. Chapter 800. Though the aim was poor, the intimidation was sufficient. The man, hearing the bullets whizzing past his ears, immediately knelt on the ground with his hands raised above his head. Don't shoot, we surrender. The sequence of movements was swift and practiced. The pursuing heavy sword infantry immediately advanced, restrained the kneeling supplicant, and firmly pressed him to the ground. After a short while, Li Rong came over, limping. She sat down opposite the kneeling man. Crossing her legs, she lit a cigarette. The man's gaze swept over her slender thighs and he hurriedly cried out, Sister Li, spare me, Sister Li, I dare not do it again, please don't kill me. The ferocity had turned into a face full of repentance. What's your name? Li Rong asked softly as she exhaled a puff of smoke. Wang Zhou, Sister Li, I won't dare do it again. Wang Zhou said, his head bowed. Who sent you to ambush me? Li Rong continued to ask. Wang Zhou paused slightly before saying, No one, Sister Li, it was just a moment of folly on my part that I came to trouble you, I was wrong, Sister Li, please be magnanimous and let me go as if I were nothing more than a fart. Li Rong sneered, You're quite loyal. Turning to a subordinate, she said, The rest of them, kill them all. No. Swish swish swish. A series of whooshing sounds rose, and the heads of Wang Zhou's subordinates tumbled to the ground. Blood splattered everywhere, and the corpses slowly collapsed to the ground. Wang Zhou was filled with regret, why had he provoked this woman? Moreover, he should have pressed on without stopping, not giving her a moment to breathe. Now, look what has happened, they had cannons and rifles, and his team was wiped out. Click! Li Rong took a rifle, loaded it, and pointed it at Wang Zhou's forehead. Who's the person behind you? Dare to say a word of denial, and I'll blow your head off. The cold muzzle felt as agonizing as a red-hot iron to Wang Zhou. Large beads of sweat kept appearing, and he could envision his head blooming under a bullet. He was done for. At this point, he didn't dare act tough and immediately said, It was Cao Genzi, he made me come to trouble you, it was all him, he told me that if I caught you, he would give me lots of resources, and that's what swayed me, Sister Li, please spare me, I'm not a human being, I shouldn't have troubled you. As he spoke, Wang Zhou had already burst into tears. Inwardly, he was cursing Cao Genzi for sending him to trouble Li Rong. If it wasn't for him, he would still be comfortably sleeping in the city. Hearing Wang Zhou's words, Li Rong began to recall the name. Cao Genzi. She had no impression of him and wondered when she had made so many enemies. Do I have a grudge with Cao Genzi? Why does he want to capture me? Li Rong continued to interrogate. Wang Zhou shook his head, I don't know that, he didn't tell me. Looking at his expression, Li Rong felt that this did not seem like a lie. She immediately said, Give me the Book of Lords. Wang Zhou obediently handed over the Book of Lords with both hands. Li Rong took it but found she couldn't consume it. This indicated that what Wang Zhou held was the Book of City Lord, and as just the mayor of a city, he had no right to decide the city's fate. Cao. Who consumed your Book of Lords? Li Rong, feeling frustrated, threw the book back at him. Cao Genzi, he's the one who consumed it, Wang Zhou responded. Li Rong turned to a soldier and said, take some people to clean up the battlefield, and then find a cart, we're going back shortly. The soldier departed to collect spoils from the battlefield. As for the corpses and the collapsed houses, they did not bother with them. These were matters the villagers would handle. Besides, Li Rong hadn't yet settled the account of their conspiracy to ambush her. Li Rong pondered over the matter concerning Cao Genzi. Her gaze fell once again on Wang Zhou, and she said coldly, do you want to live? Yes, Sister Li, I want to. Wang Zhou tried to throw himself at her feet but was kicked back. You wanted to kill me, so if I kill you right now, there's nothing to discuss. Sister Li, I want to live, Sister Li. Li Rong glared at him, continuing, you draw Cao Genzi out, let him die for you, or else you die. This. Wang Zhou's mouth gaped open, for a moment unsure how to respond. Luring Cao Genzi out, wasn't this making him betray his own people? He hesitated briefly. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Li Rong raise her gun again. Frightened, Wang Zhou immediately said, okay. Sister Li, you tell me what to do. I'm afraid I can't lure him out. Humph. At least you know yourself well. Li Rong kicked the Book of City Lord on the ground with her toe, contact him and tell him that Li Rong has been captured. Oh, okay. Wang Zhou immediately got moving, opening a private chat to start sending messages. And for realism, he even added some simple phrases. Brother Cao, that bitch Li Rong has been taken down by me. What do I do next? Li Rong watched him send it, her eyelid twitched. Wang Zhou quickly explained, for realism. Indeed, soon Cao Genzi replied, she's not dead, is she? Send me a photo to have a look. He wants a photo. Wang Zhou instructed Li Rong. Li Rong's face grew uglier, and through gritted teeth, she said, take it. She then lay on the ground with her hands behind her back as if she was subdued. Wang Zhou took 2 pictures and sent them. Cao Genzi replied, bring her to your place. I'll come and get her before nightfall. Don't kill her and don't go too far. Understood. Wang Zhou sent the reply. Then, he looked toward Li Rong. Li Rong extinguished her cigarette and said to a soldier beside her, call over 500 brothers, we'll all go and meet this person in his territory. Yes. The soldier swiftly departed. Dusk, Wang Zhou's city. Atop the city wall, Wang Zhou and Li Rong watched a troop of men approaching from afar. Wang Zhou looked down at the gun barrel pressed against his back. He swallowed his saliva and whispered, Sister Li, that's Cao Genzi's troop. Look, I didn't lie to you. I'm dead set on following you. You should know what to say and do. Lure him in, and you can live. If he notices anything, I'll blow you away immediately. Li Rong's icy voice rose from beside him. Wang Zhou shuddered mightily. Li Rong's words were even colder than the chilling wind. Understood, Sister Li. Just watch, Wang Zhou assured her, thumping his chest. Li Rong patted his shoulder and descended the city wall, instructing a few soldiers to disguise themselves and stay by Wang Zhou's side. Soon, the distant troops had drawn near. Wang Zhou, open the gate, it's bloody freezing out here, Cao Genzi's voice came from below. Wang Zhou reassessed his situation, knowing that one slip of the tongue and the militia around him could shoot or stab him. He couldn't take that risk, not for Cao Genzi. He immediately put on a smile and cursed, didn't you see my brother Cao coming? Open the gate quickly. The city gates opened. Cao Genzi led his men inside the city swiftly. He brought over 100 people, all clad in thick cotton armor, freezing from the journey. Wang Zhou scurried down from the city wall, grinning, Brother Cao, froze your butt off, didn't you? If I had known earlier, I'd have sent her to you tomorrow. Cao Genzi gave him a blank look and said, I'm already here, what's the use of saying these things now? Where is she? Not dead, right? Wang Zhou knew he was asking about Li Rong. He quickly said, how could she be dead? I remembered, we need her alive. Cao Genzi nodded, bring her out, I'll take her away directly. Wang Zhou paused for a moment and continued, Brother Cao, you'd better go take a look first, then take her. She's not easy to take away right now. Cao Genzi was startled, did you mess her up? No, no, just come and see. Saying this, he began to lead Cao Genzi towards the city lord's mansion, not forgetting to turn back and beckon, hey you, take brother Cao's men to the room on the side to wait. Don't let them all freeze. Cao Genzi didn't say much, nodding and letting his men follow. The two entered the city lord's mansion. Just through the main gate, something felt off. The guards at the gate were a special 5th Order military unit. Since when did Wang Zhou have special troops? How come he didn't know? Something seemed off. As he analyzed the situation in his mind, he suddenly heard Wang Zhou's voice, Sister Li, I've brought you this damn bastard. Sister Li? Damn bastard? What's going on? If you enjoy my content and want more videos, support me in Ko-fi. The link in the description.